We are live.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the April 6th meeting of the East Hampton Town Board. Carol, would you please read the roll call?
Councilwoman Burke Gonzalez.
Present.
Councilman Lees.
Present.
Councilwoman Overby.
Here.
Councilman Bagman.
Here.
Supervisor Van Scoyac.
Present. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the
United States of America,
Republic
the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This morning, we'll start with the public portion where any member of the public may address the board on any topic. We ask that you try to keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. The following topics will be discussed by the board today: the New York Power Authority Energy Manager app. We have Lauren Steinberg from our Natural Resources Department, along with Jeff Lano and Timothy Rose from NYPA. Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee's recommendations. We have Melissa Winslow from Natural Resources here for that presentation. A UR map, road improvement costs per unit. John Jelnicki, Town Attorney, will present. And legislation for pool houses. We have the Principal Inspector, Ann Glennon, and Town Attorney presenting on those, followed by liaison reports, and we do have a few resolutions to approve today. So, Michael, do we have any callers on the line this time?
No, we do not have any on the line now, and I'll let you know if we do. Okay,
very good. So if we do happen to get a caller a little later in the meeting, we'll try to fit them in between the topics. So in speaking with Lauren Steinberg, Natural Resources, she and I have had a couple discussions about the New York Energy Manager app, which is something that NYPA has developed, and that would allow us to manage our utility accounts and have a myriad of different, I think, positive aspects to it, including helping us with the administration of multiple accounts. As you know, we have over 100 buildings that the municipality owns and manages, and oftentimes each individual building will have a separate utility account. So this will help us track, and there are a lot of benefits. And here to present, as I said, is Lauren Steinberg and some gentlemen from NYPA. Take it away, Lauren.
Thanks, Peter. So we've mentioned in public presentations before that buildings account for approximately 30% of New York State's greenhouse gas emissions. Buildings can be large energy consumers through electricity and heating fuels, and taking action towards reducing energy consumption and costs starts with understanding how a building is using energy. The town currently does basic energy benchmarking for some of its buildings as part of its actions qualifying the town as a NYSERDA clean energy community. But I've asked Jeff Lano and Tim Rose to speak to the town board today about a service offered through the New York Power Authority called the New York Energy Manager Utility Bill Integration Service, and how this resource could further assist the town in tracking and analyzing the energy consumption, costs, and emissions from its buildings, as well as provide recommendations for how we can reduce them. So now I'll turn it over to Jeff and Tim.
Thanks, and good morning, everybody, supervisor and council folks. And we appreciate the opportunity to present the NIAM utility bill integration platform to the board. And it's been great working with Lauren up to this point and reviewing accounts and different scenarios to try to implement this and maybe help the town get more organized and save some money with their utility expenditures. So just to give everybody a kind of a high level overview of what NYPA is, and then we'll talk specifically about this service that Tim Rose is sort of our subject matter expert on for sure. I've been with NYPA for 5 years. As an account executive, handling power supply and energy efficiency project customers. NYPA, the New York Power Authority, is a state authority that is basically charged with managing and maintaining state-owned electric generation assets across the state. NYPA has 13 power plants across the state. The primary one that is most familiar to folks is the Niagara River Power Plant. It's generating clean energy for users around the state. NYPA, as part of its mission above and beyond just generating green power, is also to help the public sector implement energy efficiency and renewable projects, similar to what we're talking about here. NYPA has also been working with the town on a solar project, and other stuff we've been talking about as well, lighting and different things. So NYPA has the statutory authority to do this kind of work for the public sector, and in turn, towns and municipalities and state agencies and counties, et cetera, can work with NYPA and hire them to do this work, because essentially we've already done a detailed procurement process for different vendors, services that we offer, and folks like yourself can kind of take advantage of piggybacking kind of on our services and our procurements. So NYPA does about $300 million worth of energy efficiency work across the state and generates about 25% of the electricity consumed across the state through those assets. So I guess Lauren reached out to me several months ago when NYPA put kind of an advertisement in one of the town newspapers that folks subscribe to across the state, and contacted me, and we've been having this discussion about this way to more carefully manage energy, paying bills on time, and then actually interpreting and analyzing trends within your utility consumption to basically be able to figure out ways to pinpoint where to put potential energy savings measures in place and utilize, scarce and hard to come by resources to really use those resources in the best way possible. So we believe that you need to measure and analyze your usage to help inform where your money could be best spent. And part of our New York Energy Manager program really allows you to do that and really not be handling paperwork and that's scattered throughout various locations throughout the town or what have you, but have everything kind of at your fingertips, along with a variety of ways to kind of twist and analyze data, so you could really be comparing and contrasting performance across your portfolio, across different seasons, comparing year to year, et cetera, as data gets into the system. So it could be a really helpful and useful tool, and can also be helpful to expedite and make things like outside accounting audits and things like that go more smoothly also, because there's a storage house for all of your invoicing, for all of your utilities. So what Tim and I have done is prepared kind of a high-level spreadsheet, PowerPoint, to review the elements and benefits of the UBI program. And we've also shared a proposal with the town and Lauren to implement this project for a 2-year period, with the first year being some startup costs as we sort of build out your system and establish the flow of data from your different utilities into this system. So I'm going to hand it off to Tim, but we just want everybody to know that if something strikes you, you have a question, just jump right in. We want to have, we're having a conversation here with you guys. We're not, a typical, trying to sell you something. We're trying to offer this as a potential tool and resource for the town. So we just want to have a conversation, and we're very, very open to answering any questions. So Tim, if you want to take over, maybe share your screen with the proposal, with the PowerPoint, and we'll go from there. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Jeff. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tim Rose with NYPA. Just quickly, I've been on the New York Energy Manager side for 2 years, working with a lot of the state agencies, villages and towns on the UBI, particularly because of the actually energy platform that we have with NIAM, and then also the UBI program, how that works and how much that's really helped customers at a lesser cost if the budgets don't allow them to do metering, and get some of the same advantages to the UBI as you would a metering project. So going across the state and just kind of educating folks on that, as we have with Lauren over some time, and how the UBI system works and the value it can bring. So what I will try to do here is share the presentation that I have, and hopefully everybody will be able to see this once we get it up here. Just let me know if you see that on the screen, hopefully.
Not yet.
Not yet?
But something's happening. Here we go.
How about now?
You got it.
All right. So just a quick note on NIAM and New York Energy Manager. Just quickly, it was actually created in 2014 for a lot of the executive orders, especially the Executive Order 88, for really reporting tools, really getting data from a lot of our state agencies and facilities, and bring in that data into our energy platform that's really just enhanced year after year since we've had this, and really see how they're trending and see how the energy sustainability goals that the state has for agencies as well, and just kind of overall get an overview of our customers and our state agencies, and really just use that as a reporting tool. Since then, we've grown into a lot more than just a reporting tool. We're actually working on meter installations now that brings in data to the energy platform, and just doing a lot of sustainability goals with our customers, not just on executive orders, but on a daily basis. So Energy Manager is really created for an energy reporting tool, but also get the sustainability goals with our customers. UBI, the NIAM UBI program, is one of those product offerings that we have with NIAM that and was created really when folks had no opportunity to do metering, sub-metering or whole metering on a facility. So what UBI is and how it works is it is a subscription service that New York Energy Manager has come up with and has created for our customers who right now are not interested in doing a full metering project, which can be very expensive, but wants that utility data to view in just one spot, but an energy platform to get that energy data, right? So UBI pulls your utility information into our platform, and basically how that works is we link to your utilities. We link all your utility accounts, and I've known, looking through what Lauren sent, so I know the ones that we have, including water, can be added to the New York Energy Manager. We can collect that data each month, and it's very easy and it's very quick. And so a lot of that, what you're going to have is right now, if someone's putting, say, 85 accounts in manually, once we link to those accounts, it's automatic every month, which is great. It really does save a lot of time for someone who has to get behind that and manually input that data. This is being pulled every month directly from the accounts. And it's being updated as well as from the provider, but also on our New York Energy Manager side. So it's all done in automation, and it's very simple. This is nothing new, for a lot of the private sector folks, but for our state agencies, this is what we're using to make it a lot easier, but also collect that bill data. What happens now after that data is collected into the New York Energy platform, you're able to view all your billing cycles all in one place. It's an easy link, and in that search box of each account, you just put your account number in if you want to see it individually, or if you want to see it as a whole, you can compare it any way you want in one spot. Very, very simple and very quick, but it's also very efficient. And so just on the billing side alone, It's saving time. But I can tell you with one of our large agencies, just as a quick example, and this was just recent, they had 12 months of billing. And what happened was somewhere along the month, a couple of decimal points were misplaced in November and back in September. And they did not have this program yet. And it was a real hectic time for them to figure out that and balance that out. Now that they're signed up with this program, they would have found that in 5 minutes because it would have been red flagged. And it would have saved a lot of time, but it would have saved them thousands of dollars prior to having to go back to look at the billing cycle. So this flags any mistakes or anything it sees that might be out of the normal. And that's really a big time saver, but it's also saving money along with that. So it has a lot of benefits on that end of it. Once you're linked onto the program and able to compare all the billing and all the usage and the information that this is able to collect. And the platform shows a lot of different things on the billing as well, especially if you're looking at pulling that from a main meter from a facility. A lot of things you'll see on the utility data is some trending, and also ability to compare the energy use and performance of the billing cycles or facilities that's listed. And that's what we do. We list the facilities. And then you're also able to compare consumption versus demand. That seems to be a real big winner with a lot of our customers, because just off a billing cycle, they're not able, as a customer, able to compare consumption versus demand. So this is giving you some energy trends, which you'll see here soon, and how that really has added a big value. But not just the value, but the charts that we actually export as well is usually a cost with our private sector friends. And to us, all of this data is not at a cost. So, or ongoing cost, which is great. So once you're on board, and we do offer this service as well, once everything is in our hierarchies, our utilities are listed, we do offer a 90-day training period. And we've gone through that with Lauren just to make sure that everybody's aware of it. It's called an advisory services. And what that entails basically is we're going to go over the reports that we create in the platform and work with anybody who wants to learn more about the reports, what you can do with those trends that you're going to see, and also how to look at your billing and the cycles and what UBI really can add as a value than just pulling data into one spot, or make it easy so no one has to manually input the data. But there's a lot of other things to this service that you get than just stop to have to manually put this in. It's automated, but there's a lot of benefits to it. And so what we see is, this slide is great. This is really from our customers. This is what we're hearing. If you look here on the right, you see this is kind of hard to see, but this is the platform. This gives you some of those reports, some of the trends by day, time, and dates. And this can be customized, which is really great. Again, no cost. Most energy platforms, if you make an adjustment or want to see it in a different view, there's a cost for that. We don't charge for that. We have about 6 different views today. You can see many trends and how this is laid out, which is really helpful, especially to an energy manager. But what you usually are, what we're hearing at least, is some of the bigger bullet points is energy sustainability dashboards. That box is checked with this service. You get this and the ability to look at it. Invoice management, absolutely. So you're taking away from manually input data to automated, right? Now folks can look at the billing cycle, learn more about it, maybe find some things that they want to tweak during, whatever it could be, cost, it could be energy sustainability goals, whatever it is. It's a much easier look in the energy platform than to do it manually. Benchmarking, it can be for facilities, depending if you have a 25,000 square foot building and you have another 25,000 square foot building and one's using more energy than the other, why is that? That helps with that as well. Peak load management, absolutely. The charts and these trends will show your peak loads and how they're trending as well. maybe there's some adjustments that could be made. You can do all of that from these reports. That's the sustainability management piece. So definitely big piece of this is working towards those goals that our customers have. Only way of doing that is really finding out how you're trending. Where are we at? And this really helps with that tremendously. And then the bill payment, absolutely, and energy reporting. So these are what, the feedback so far we've received, from our customers. And that's big and small, quite honestly. So the ROI to the UBI project, which everybody wants to see, and this is the bare minimum. So if you take this and just use it as hey, we're not going to manually input it anymore. We're going to look at some energy data, but maybe we're not going to be taking a deeper dive into it right now. This is what you would typically see, $50 to $75 per account on billing issues is usually the payback that we see. And this is bad timing. Of course, this is going to happen. I got to just kick in my, sorry for that. I got a security thing here with NIPA. Let's pop that back. So typically as the lowest you're going to see is $75 per account. Now what we really see with our customers on the savings is usually per account at $150 to about $200. Because what's happening is they're taking those trends, right, that they're getting from the platform, and now they're taking a deeper dive into these and see where the adjustments could be made. And we don't have probably a lot of time to go through it. When we work with you in those 90 days, we look at those trends and say, hey, we see an opportunity here that we could address. And that's how we start the ball going and getting the folks involved a lot more with trying to make some changes through maybe some facilities that are giving you some trouble. So definitely helps with that. And then also reporting. If there's a Build Smart program like NIPA has today, or if there's an executive order, maybe there's different sustainability goals, this would help with the reporting side as well and make it a lot easier to gauge it, gain that data, and report out on it. I know we have a customer that has to report out their utilities every 12 months. We can run that report through this system in under 10 minutes. And it's very accurate. It's 100% accurate. So that's been a big value. So this is what you might have all viewed this. This is what we sent over for a cost structure for a review, I believe, to Lauren. I think Jeff sent this over. So I just included it into the slide. The town of East Hampton, what we've proposed is the 85 utility accounts. And then the first year with all the accounts that we have is $79.65. That's for the total charge. And then, that's the data, that's the monthly data, that's the reports, that's the training, that's the whole thing that you would get through the platform as well. And so that's the first year. Now the second year, this is where it gets knocked down considerably. And this is year 2. And so the IT work has been done. And so the account setup has been done. So at the end of the day, we lower it considerably. So $54.65 is the second year cost as we know it today. And I say that because it could even be reduced more depending on how we work the program after this year. But that is where we're at right now with it. And that, includes all the accounts. But if you do add like an account for water, if you miss one, we don't add if there's only 2 or 3 accounts. We add 5 or 6 or 7 more accounts throughout the year. Then there's a base price for that. But, typically if it's only a few accounts that we, maybe I missed or we want to add throughout the year, there's no charge for that for the town. So we want to make clear on that. And then the last slide, security. I mean, as NIPA, as a utility, I really have to say, I think we're, one of the best in the business for that. Last thing we want to do is have any problems, and NYPA does everything possible to make sure that not just on your end as a customer, that the security is taken care of, but on our end, and that data is protected on ours too. So we are constantly looking at that, and we know how sensitive that is on both sides. So never have had an issue, and to date, and hopefully, hopefully that continues. But we are monitoring that 24/7. So with that, that's the overview. That's what I have for today. And if anybody has any questions, we'll open it up.
Thank you, Timothy. The board members have any questions?
Yeah, my only question is, Lauren, have you brought this over to Buildings and Grounds, knowing that they're the ones that look at, a lot of these energy and utility expenditures also? And I think that might be an introduction we need to do, also make with Tony and his staff.
Yeah, I know that they know that we do energy benchmarking because I'm constantly over there asking for their bills. So they know I do that, and they know why we do it. I've mentioned to them that there is a more streamlined and comprehensive service that we're looking into. Their response is great, cool. We can definitely include them in this as well, and make them involved in reviewing the reports that the service provides for how we can make changes.
So as Lauren had stated, we did undertake an effort to benchmark the major town buildings in terms of energy use a while back, and to be able to address that energy use, we've made a number of strides towards reducing our energy use since that initial benchmarking. But I believe we had a limit as to the square foot size of each structure that we were going to benchmark. This obviously would streamline all of the additional accounts, and that benchmarking could be completed on every town building that has, an energy account, and we could manage that energy usage from that initial benchmarking to further reduce our consumption across the board. This is very much in line with our recently declared climate emergency declaration, where we're going to take into account every possible way that we can address the reduction of fossil fuel use, energy use in general, in order to promote a cleaner and more efficient environment. And in terms of efficiency, as it was stated, this would streamline a great deal of the administrative work that goes into tracking bills and paying invoices. So I think those are all definite benefits. We can track on the energy sustainability side, dashboard, how we're doing, what kind of progress we're making, as well as understanding, peak load. I know one of the other efforts we undertook recently was to reduce peak load through the use of our gas-powered generator at peak times, which resulted in about a 35% reduction of the fossil fuels that would be used for generating that peak demand. Also, with the help of NYPA, we have the Parks building solar roof and battery storage. I think that's the first municipality in New York State to have that combined solar battery storage capability. So, we're proud of that. And we know that that's going to save us roughly about $10,000 per year right there. That, along with our LED lighting upgrades throughout the various buildings, I think we're well over $100,000 worth of savings. We're saving about $18,000 a year on our Montauk lighting district due to the LED light replacement there. And thanks to Councilman Lease, we have standalone solar lighting at the new parking lot in Amagansett. So, this is another way that we can further our effort towards energy sustainability.
So can I just ask a question? So this is going to go back 1 year? Is that what?
Yeah, we can go back 1 year, and depending on how much we had to work with prior, sometimes we're able to go back. We've had a couple of customers almost 24 months.
Because I would think since last year, many of our, or at least some of our buildings were shut down because of COVID or weren't operating the way they normally operate, we would try to go back further than that so that we had a year where, you know, there was more normalcy.
That's a great point you just bring up, because it's been really great to see that last year, because some of these facilities were, say, half capacity or they were shut down. What it's done, though, is give us more information on the facilities that were running and how that was trending through a COVID time prior to what, you know, regular time is. So now you have a couple of different scenarios to look at. You know, you have COVID, and then you have your regular time through the seasons, and it's really unique to see the differences. So that information is very helpful, and I think it's going to be even more helpful as we go on this year. So.
And Lauren, how do you see yourself utilizing this information once that it's all in one place?
So I think just having everything in one place in a format that is more user-friendly than what we currently do, which is really bare bones. I think we'll be able to look at this and see, you know, where are our biggest energy offenders? You know, which buildings are using the most energy? Where can we implement changes? You know, through you know, maybe updating HVAC equipment or maybe making behavioral changes to try and bring that consumption down.
Right. It'll make Lauren's job a lot easier as it pertains to exactly what she said in referencing benchmarking, in that this, you could basically be benchmarking your buildings on a monthly basis. Usually that's the kind of thing that's done annually because it's labor intensive, assembling all the data, putting it all together. So you could see that, gee, from December to January, our building X bumped up 25%. What's going on over there? And then maybe you can learn that controls are failing or something's leaking, so more steam has to be generated or whatever the scenario might be, but it'll kind of give you that immediate clue as to something's going on there that otherwise you might not have, you know, recognized or realized. Because you're still getting heat in the building, but, you know.
Have other municipalities throughout the state signed on to this and are utilizing the service?
Yes, absolutely. We have some large customers. We also have townships and also the city of Albany. So we have a couple of different sizes, but yes, we've done very well with it, especially in the past 12 months.
Is it mostly upstate that are doing it, or is it throughout the state?
It's throughout the state, but mostly it's been easier for upstate to get on sooner just because of the amount of the accounts that we have. So the step one in this is actually getting through the hierarchy sheets and the utility accounts and making sure they're listed just as they are as the utility, but how you want to tag them or see them as well. So it's two-sided. And it does take a little bit of work, and it's on my end mostly once I get the accounts. But yeah, we have one customer that has 500 accounts and another one that has 900. So I'm still working with the 900 one. So hopefully by the end of the month, I'm done with it.
And Tim, I have another one in the pipeline. I mean, in addition to SUNY Stony Brook, Kathy's one of our big clients, customers on all things related to NIAM. But Nassau County is also, you know, interested in Tim. They have about 1,800 accounts, so that's a pretty big whale.
Yeah,
but
keep me busy.
Yeah. No, this makes a lot of sense. You know, it's something that we should move forward with.
It's a fairly new offer because, like Tim had said earlier, the traditional New York Energy Manager would kind of like take on a building and install meters, and you could really, you know, figure out at the asset level within that building where your electric is being consumed. But as kind of COVID kind of affected people's budgets heavily, as you all know, and this is a way to get some, you know, more building-based data that's perhaps not as granular as if you had, 15 meters in your town hall, but at least you can get some information about energy consumption, be looking at trends, be looking at benchmarking and things like that, and just having everything warehoused in one spot for easy to pull information and data gathering for a variety of things that I know Lauren's working on with clean energy communities and climate smart communities and things. It's good to have all that information right at your fingertips.
What this actually does, it brings up to me what recently happened in our buildings and grounds department, in which it was for our lighting districts, in which we actually got a rebate, when we found we were being overcharged on that by tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Is our lighting districts or our municipal lighting that's on highways, would that be able to be encapsulated and captured into this also?
Yes. Yeah. And I think you have 3 off the top of my, because I know I have been, talking with Lauren and actually Sylvia and Kim about LED street lighting, one of NYPA's excellent energy efficiency offers. So those accounts as well can be, put into this platform, so you could be tracking that. But that's kind of how it's set up now with PSEG, is that's just kind of deemed usage and the same invoice essentially over and over again. So you can't really track necessarily within that system, and your invoices should be consistent because they're all basically based on your tariff, not use, because they're not metered. But that would certainly be in the platform, though, the information.
Thank you.
But the street lighting project, incidentally, is a big way to chip away at your greenhouse gas emissions reductions, save money on maintenance as well, and even get some shared services grants as we talk to neighboring villages and such. So something to think about for another meeting.
Yeah, that's another work session that'll come up relatively soon. So
great. Awesome.
Any other questions for Jeff or Timothy at this point?
No, thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Appreciate your time and look forward to moving along.
Absolutely, Supervisor. So we'll hear back from Lauren, I suppose, and at that point we'll generate, a document for execution so we can, get into the weeds on getting this thing going for you guys.
Absolutely. Appreciate that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
Take care and be well.
Okay.
Michael, do we have any callers on the line?
No, there are no callers on the line, and there has not been any.
We'll move on to our next topic, and we have discussion of the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee's recommendations for water quality improvement funds. And we have Melissa Winslow with us this morning.
Good morning. I'm just going to share my screen. I have a presentation. Can you all see that all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm Melissa Winslow. I'm a senior environmental analyst in the town's natural resources department. I'm also the coordinator for the Water Quality Technical Advisory Committee. So I'll be making recommendations on behalf of the committee today. I just wanted to give a little bit of a background on why these projects are before you today. So all of these projects to be discussed are included in the Town of East Hampton Water Quality Improvement Plan. The plan incorporated eligible projects in the town and both villages of East Hampton and Sag Harbor that meet the criteria for funding based on the CPF law. And were all heard through public hearing process in 2016. So they're previously approved, but they're now ready to move forward. They're either shovel ready or have been sponsored by a branch of one of the municipalities. So the first project I'm going to talk to you about today was sponsored by the Village of Sag Harbor. This is actually the last project that was included in their part of the water quality improvement plan that hasn't been funded yet. So EH 1 and 2 were the permeable pavement along Bay Street in Sag Harbor, which was installed late last year. We also installed rain gardens in Marine Park. That was another project that kind of combined 3, 4, 5, and 6. And those are actually just starting to sprout. So those will be flowering pretty soon. It'll be, both functional and beautiful there in Marine Park. EH10 was rain gardens in the road right-of-way of Terry Drive. We're working with Nelson and Pope, and they're currently doing final engineering design on that and getting homeowners to buy in to sponsor rain gardens in that area. EH9, the town funded partially through Sag Harbor. Those were Havens Beach Rain Gardens. They received a grant through Peconic Estuary Program, and then the town funded the remaining portion. And then EH7 and 7A were just funded at the end of last year, and those are rain gardens along Bay Street. So they've made a lot of headway with all their water quality improvement projects, and they came to the Water Quality Committee to request funding for final engineering design for EH8.
Melissa, could you just give a brief description of what a great rain garden is for our viewers who may not know?
Sure. So a rain garden is, it can be kind of a combination of different bioretention areas, but it's a depression that collects stormwater runoff, and through natural processes of plant growth can both, take in and infiltrate the stormwater to be treated naturally, and then also nutrients to be taken up by the plants as they grow. So that basically prevents that those nutrients and bacteria, sediments can be captured in the area, and that prevents it from directly discharging into our local water bodies.
Thank you.
Yep. So this project is proposing 9 rain gardens within the road right-of-way of Hempstead Street. It's going to be designed and located to provide the largest positive impact to surface waters. So this would be directly to Havens Beach and Sag Harbor Bay, and improving water quality there by preventing nutrients, pathogens, and other potential pollutants that could be in the stormwater from entering the bay directly. This proposal included some estimated reduction of pollutants, total nitrogen around 17.4 pounds per year. This is pretty similar to the amount that a single family home would remove through implementing an IA or low nitrogen septic system. Total phosphorus, it would remove around 2 pounds per year, suspended solids or sediments, a little over 1,000 pounds per year, and then 744 billion coliform units per year for bacteria. So the ideal goal is that for this project is to get rain garden buy-in from the adjacent homeowners that would basically assist the village with maintenance and monitoring and ensure the continued success of these projects. So the first 2 years, maintenance and monitoring would be completed by the village of Sag Harbor, and then the village would launch a sponsor rain garden program where the homeowners would be educated, and they would have buy-in, and it's right in front of their home, so they have an incentive to keep it looking nice and functioning. So the total estimated cost for the entire project is around $192,000. For right now, the village of Sag Harbor is requesting funds for final engineering design, which is estimated at $30,000. Just to give you a little bit, of orientation of where these rain gardens would be installed, just in case you're not as well versed in Sag Harbor streets. So Hempstead Street is right off of Bay Street, and it has a direct outflow to a drainage ditch to Havens Beach. So a little bit of a zoomed in version. So there's 9 proposed rain gardens in that little yellow outline. The red dots are the existing catch basins, which would capture the stormwater and bring it to the drainage ditch that goes directly out to Havens Beach. The blue area is the treatment area, which basically is the catchment area that these rain gardens would be treating. Okay, so the next project is sponsored by the Village of East Hampton.
Can I just go on to that one, Melissa, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Discussion on that. with a lot of the projects, I know with even the permeable pavement, going in before, my long-term concerns are always just about maintenance on it, of these projects, make sure that they work well, are becoming sightly. And again, as we move forward in the years and decades to come, that we can do more of these. If there is not a buy-in for these rain gardens and the outreach to the neighbors, is the municipality going to take care of these rain gardens as far as maintenance, cutting, and anything else that's needed? Is that how that would work in the end?
I think ideally they would locate them based on the homeowner buy-in. So it would be focused on that area where they want to capture the stormwater. But they're doing education and outreach right now, at least for the Terry Drive projects, to get those homeowners in that area to be interested and active on, wanting these in front of their house. It's a good thing. It's going to beautify the area right in front of their property, but also, they might have flooding on their lawn that they want to have alleviated. So it's kind of a win-win for both the homeowner and for the municipality. They would also have to have an agreement with the Village of Sag Harbor, which would run with the land. So they would be basically contracted to make sure that this is going to be ongoing for maintenance. And if not, then Village of Sag Harbor would step in and make sure that it's taken care of.
I think it's worth mentioning that this particular area, the watershed to Havens Beach, is of great concern as the water quality at Havens Beach has been, compromised and is really in poor stead for much of the year, especially after rainfall events. And there's been perennial concern about this area and wastewater storm runoff getting into that drain that ends up in the bay right by the bathing beach. So, this is another effort to really address that larger problem in the area.
Definitely. And the Village of Sag Harbor has been very proactive with all of their water quality improvement projects, and they have, a vested interest in making sure that they're successful. So, ideally that the homeowner would be interested and, want to do the maintenance and make sure that, the area right in front of their house is, it's functioning, but also, doesn't get weeds and overgrown. And then the Village of Sag Harbor, would make sure that that is completed through maintenance and monitoring on their own side. Were there any other questions about the Sag Harbor project, or should I move on?
Thank you, Melissa.
Okay. So this project would be familiar. Phase 1 of the Town Pond Environmental Dredge was funded in 2020 through the Town of East Hampton CPF Water Quality Fund. This was to complete a pilot to ensure that the dredging of Town Pond would be able to be completed. They were awarded $191,500 for that phase of the project. The village has reported back that that was successful. They've dredged about 25% of the pond, and they're ready to move forward with phase 2 to complete the dredging of approximately 7,000 to 10,000 cubic yards of sediment from Town Pond. The water quality improvement aspect of this would be to remove a source of phosphorus, as phosphorus, one is a limiting nutrient in freshwater bodies. And then also phosphorus binds to sediments. So by removing the sediment, you're also removing that source of phosphorus. It's also going to improve the stormwater detention, or basically the volume of stormwater that Town Pond can store and treat. And then also the residence time for treatment and settling. It's also the main goal to improve water quality in Hook Pond as Town Pond flows into Hook Pond, which will improve habitat for aquatic life, increase depth, and many other benefits. So this is a shovel-ready project. It's already been permitted. Phase 1 is completed, so they're requesting an additional $672,000 to complete phase 2 of the Town Pond dredge. The Water Quality Committee also had a discussion about ongoing smaller scale maintenance, which would be performed by the Village of East Hampton. And this is actually part of their plan to ensure that, the continued function of Town Pond is sustained and that the benefits of the sediment removal are long-term. So that, a more costly dredge wouldn't be required. So these are just some figures. The left side is the original conceptual plan from the permitting process from the village, showing where the stockpiling of the sediment would occur for dewatering. And then it will be shipped off-site to a deposit site. And then the right side is just showing the proximity of Town Pond to Hook Pond. I think a lot of people might not realize, how important Town Pond is to the functioning and health of Hook Pond. And these are just some photos from the pilot and just showing that, the one area, about 25% of the pond has been dredged, depth has been met, and they're going to continue on and finish the dredging project.
Melissa, where is most of the phosphorus coming from? Was that coming from farm fields initially?
I think it's a combination of legacy runoff from farm fields, but also just stormwater runoff. Could be some from, on-site septic systems. So it's kind of a combination of sources, but it's, the phosphorus binds to the sediment. So it can be, could be there for many, many years before it gets resuspended or removed.
And where's the material being, going to?
It's actually going to a private deposit site off-site from Town Pond. I don't know if Billy's on here still, but he might be able to answer a little bit more questions about the dredging process and deposit.
Melissa, how many houses around Hook Pond have asked, or do you know, have put in IA systems?
I don't know the number off the top of my head. I know the village has really picked up speed on homeowners taking advantage of our septic improvement program. I could get you those numbers though, for the exact number.
And do you have, or is there available a management plan for the golf course so we know what is being put on the, the surfaces there?
I believe so. And I know that the village did do a sub-watershed management plan for Hook Pond, which included looking at fertilizer use on the golf course and trying to, restrict that if possible. Are there any more questions about the?
Okay, thank you, Melissa. If you want to move on to the next project.
Sure. So I have two more left to talk about. This one is from the town of East Hampton trustees. They're looking to replace one of their older pump out boats. It's from 2003. The town awarded the trustees a little over $48,000 for a new pump out boat for Lake Montauk last year. This boat has been delivered and will be used through 2021 in Lake Montauk. Since the pandemic began, there's been a lot more boating activity. So the trustees want to make sure that they have the ability and capacity to make sure that there's no, direct discharges from boats to our precious water bodies. So the town of trustees are going to replace their 2003 pump out boat. They originally planned to refurbish it, but looking at the costs, it was actually only about $1,500 more to just get a brand new boat and replace their boat. So this would increase the life of the capacity of pump outs for the trustees. The total cost for the new boat is a little over $108,000. They received a grant from the New York State Clean Vessel Assistance Program. They sold their 2003 boat for $14,000. So they're requesting $34,570 through CPF to pay for the remainder of the boat costs. So this would be a great addition to their fleet. The increase in boating activity and having a second boat that's fully functional and will have a longer useful life would be very useful.
Questions or comments?
So when would that boat be available for use if they purchase one?
They're looking to use it for this coming season. So they would have both new boats for 2021 pump outs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. The last project I have for you is from the town aquaculture department. They're proposing doing a sugar kelp hatchery and grow out program for the town of East Hampton. So this would provide future local growers sugar kelp seed source. And the Water Quality Committee saw this as a really big plus for helping develop the industry out here and make this more readily available. So the goal here is growth of sugar kelp, and by removing or extracting the kelp out of the water body at the end of the growing season, that nutrient-laden sugar kelp that takes up nitrogen would be removed from the system, thereby removing the nitrogen from the water body. The potential reuse would be for organic fertilizer and compost. We've actually already talked to the town highway department, and they're on board with this. And this would reduce the need for importing fertilizer from outside of the watershed. And then, so basically the details, the Shellfish Hatchery seeks to establish sugar kelp hatchery in its existing facility in Montauk. The propagated seed strings will be used in our inshore waters, starting with 3 Mile Harbor and then expanding to Hog Creek and beyond there in the following years. And this is really ideal for off-season for the existing staffing, since they're so busy with the Shellfish Hatchery during the summer months. Since sugar kelp grows in the off-season in the winter months, this is perfect for them to keep their staff busy and also have additional water quality improvement in our inshore water bodies. So they're requesting $14,660.80 for the equipment and supplies needed to develop the sugar kelp hatchery and do winter grow outs in 3 Mile Harbor and Hog Creek. So this is just showing maps of where their proposal for the proposed water or grow out areas are. So for year 1 and 2, the grow out sites will be in 3 Mile Harbor. They're going to start with 3 100-foot lines. And then based on the success of that, the following year, they will be doing 20 200-foot lines at the most successful site. And then they will follow suit in Hog Creek in years 2 and 3.
Questions or comments?
So Melissa, in your conversations with the highway department, would they be able to process the kelp and it would be available then for local consumption by either individuals or landscaping companies?
Yes, yep.
So it would be sold, or would it be free, or do we know yet?
I think it would go into their composting.
Compost is free to residents, but I think it is sold to commercial entities.
So it would go into that program, I guess is what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the benefits of the nutrients from the sugar kelp and other organic matter like that is that those nutrients are slow release when they're placed on landscaping versus commercial pelletized or powdered liquid fertilizers, which after a rainfall very quickly get into watersheds.
Don't we have issues with composting and water quality, Melissa? I'm just worried about the idea of adding, you're removing nitrates from one place and putting them in another place, and composting has raised some very significant problems in terms of creating degraded water quality and drains and gets into the groundwater. I'm not sure that that's a completely productive thing to do. The other thing is that, from what I understand, kelp is really potentially a food product. Of course, that takes a lot more, regulation to produce. But that I think that is what is so interesting about kelp. It just seems a little odd to be removing nitrates from our surface waters and putting them into composting. And composting has been a huge, huge source of water pollution throughout Long Island and a very big concern. How much nitrate, would be removed in this project?
I would have to talk to Barley to get the estimates on the numbers of nitrogen based on, the growth rates of the kelp, which I can pull from his proposal. I don't think that the amount of the kelp that, at least with this pilot project, would really be much of an addition to the existing, compost concerns. This would really be more of an organic and better source of fertilizers through that composting program than, what we would likely have existing. I think that long-term, we would want to look at other uses or other byproducts from this process, because I know that, it would be a great reuse for food and, more productive ways to use the kelp.
Yeah, I'd be more interested in the food use, but I'm concerned about robbing Peter to pay Paul and, creating more damaging compost. I mean, the horse block study is a pretty well-known study in Suffolk County, and it produced some pretty, scary information about what's coming out of composting. It's a very, very, dangerous material to be doubling down on. I'm not sure that it's a good idea.
I would have more concerns instead of over 2 100-foot lines of sugar kelp about the phosphorus going to a different off-site location by tons. And this project, I think this as just a minor pilot program, we can see where it goes, but maybe long-term effects. That might not be something that we want in our compost, but the small amount that they're looking to do for this pilot, I'm less concerned than the phosphorus being removed from the village going to private property.
Why don't we ask Barley to come in and make a presentation at a work session about his proposal?
But I think that could be helpful just to understand quantities. But, I think, in the past, we've looked at the removal of the macroalgae from Georgia Pond. We've waived the fees from the harvester so that material could be composted. The councilman is correct in that major composting facilities do pose a potential threat to overloading of certain elements, nitrates, whatnot, into the ground. We know what the immediate impacts to watersheds and water bodies are when that nitrogen is overloaded. The areas that are proposed for this kelp grow out are areas that are already in perilled waters due to algal blooms, particularly head of 3 Mile Harbor. And so to remove the excess nitrogen there, I think the benefit of that far outweighs any potential harm from that same amount going onto land. But that's certainly something we should take a look at.
I'd like to know the quantities as well, what we're talking about.
In the application, the quantities of nitrogen removal equates to the capability of approximately 3.1 IA/OWTS. So it's about 6 pounds of nitrogen.
Over what period of time?
1 year.
One season.
I'm not sure the benefit is I think we need more information on this. I'm happy to listen, but composting is not something to be doubling down on, especially in a groundwater sensitive area, which it is up there by the dump, actually. Oddly enough, it's near a very important groundwater divide.
Melissa, prior to that, do you want to forward the any of these applications to the board members for the review?
Sure. And again, I think the long-term goal would be to look at all of the beneficial reuses of the kelp, because ideally to, develop an industry, you want to make sure that it's profitable. So, the best uses might not be for compost. But this was just for, the pilot to get it started and see how the efficacy of the sugar kelp growing in 3 Mile Harbor and Hog Creek would work. And, it hopefully take off from there with, more development of how we can reuse it and, how much nitrogen is really being removed.
Any
Yeah,
other,
I really like this program, so I am very much in favor of it.
yeah, I agree. It poses a number of, I think, significant benefits over time, and we should continue to look into this. Any other comments or questions? Okay, thank you very much, Melissa. Appreciate your presentation, the
Thank you
recommendation.
for your time.
We'll certainly consider them, and I think
Melissa,
I have to say, yeah, I was going to say I support all of them myself. I don't know if other board members have looked at this long enough and are prepared to at least comment on whether or not they support them at this time. If not, we'll take it up at a further work session.
I just ask for a little information on, IA systems around the Hook Pond and any kind of management that is known on the golf course, so that we can make sure that Hook Pond stays safe and clean.
Yep, that's our goal.
and could you provide a budget so we could just see, how much of the water quality funding has been encumbered already and what we have remaining for the year? That would be
Sure.
helpful.
I have that. Yep.
Thank you. So we have some context.
Great.
And Melissa, is there another round upcoming also, just for the general public to be knowledgeable about?
So the Water Quality Committee is currently evaluating all the proposals we've received through the request for applications for water quality projects. So you can expect a presentation from the Water Quality Committee in the next few weeks. I believe based on our availability of funding this year, there will only be one round of the RFA. This year was for water quality funding was the budget was a lot lower. Next year will be based on, the booming year we had in 2020 for housing. So, our budget will be almost double what we have this year. So we'll be able to fund a lot more projects.
Thank you for that. I mean, I've reviewed all the applications that have come in, the ones that you just sent them to. I'm comfortable. It's maintenance is on some of these projects, long-term maintenance, to make sure that they continue to work. Functionality, sometimes projects are good on paper, but the long-term maintenance of projects has always been my it's not necessarily a concern, but I just want to make sure, we are factoring those in. But all these projects, there are benefits to it, and I'm happy that there's multiple municipalities within our, within the township that we're able to assist. So I am supportive of them all too.
Any other comments before we move on? Again, thank you, Melissa. Appreciate all your hard work on water quality and bringing us up to date on the recommendations of the committee.
Thank you very much, Supervisor and town board members.
Thanks, Melissa.
Have a good day. Michael, do we have any callers on the line?
No, we do not, and we have not received any.
Okay, we'll move on then to our next topic, which is the UR road improvements, cost per unit. I think it's been since 2003 since those unit costs were adjusted.
Yeah, last time was, I think, the end of 2003. It was set at $3 per improvement unit.
And so just basically what we've found is that the estimates for road improvement costs when someone goes to develop a property in an urban renewal map, that those estimates fall sometimes 2 to 3 times less than what the actual costs are. And this has created a number of problems for people. Sometimes, first home owners finding out suddenly that they have additional costs, which are nearly insurmountable in some cases that they hadn't been able to budget for and anticipate based on our method of calculating those unit costs. So that's sort of a context for where we are in the discussion. John, you could fill in any more of the background information and where we stand with the recommendations.
Okay, well, that's a pretty good summary of where we are. I mean, these estimates that people have been using, and this is an estimate for the bonding value of what kind of a bond you should submit to the town, and that's for us to step in and do work if a applicant defaults in performing their road improvement assignment. But people use that as sort of the benchmark for what their cost of the road work or drainage work, whatever the assignment is going to be for them. And they take that number, and especially in recent times, they go out and they find that it's so much more than that. And there's not a lot of flexibility in the code to adjust an assignment. I mean, you can change from paving to drainage, but there's a certain amount of units assigned for each type of work, and you have to do the required units in connection with your building permit. So we went and we had a discussion with Vinny Gordiello, who's our outside engineer with relation to urban renewal work and assignments, and he took a look at it, and he came back with a recommendation that $5 per unit would be a more realistic value to assign to get the bonding estimate to be more in keeping with the actual cost of getting the work done. And so I think it's a good idea. I understand that there was always some concern that if you increase the number of units, the bonds will become a little more expensive for the property owners. But I think it's much more realistic that they have a fairly good, accurate representation on the actual improvement cost when they get these bonds. And again, the way our system is set up, you can get your road assignment. If you don't want to do a bond, which could be a certified check or a letter of credit, if you don't want to give us the security, you do have the right to go ahead and do the road improvement work first and then get your building permit. Most people prefer to post the bond and get the building permit, do all the work while they're doing the work on the house, and then when they're ready for CO, they'll have the work inspected and signed off on as well. But owners always have that option to not post a bond and do the road improvement work. So again, this is just used as a, it's for us, it's intended to set the security, but for most of the people who are involved in these urban renewal parcels, they tend to look at that number as that's what the work is going to cost me. So I think it's a good idea to up the unit cost to something that's a little more realistic in the market today. So I think $5 per unit is a good idea.
I apologize, John. What was the original?
$3 is the $3 is the existing. I think since like November of 2003, and it's really started to go. It's really not reflective of cost for a good number of years now, which is why the recommendation is to increase it so much at this point.
So does this just take a resolution of the town board, John?
Yes. Yeah, just the resolution.
Okay.
So, the other aspect of this is because people don't know ahead of time.
Right.
They're not able to roll that into their mortgage or
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. And then they're really surprised.
That's a side expense that they just financially can't handle. And I think it affects, the biggest impact is really on those who are marginally able to buy property and build a first home in many cases. And I know we've had several cases of young families finding out sticker shock kind of after the fact and kind of between a rock and a hard place. So I think everyone understanding up front what the actual real costs are is really important. Any other questions or comments on this topic?
No.
It looks like we do have one caller now on the line.
Yes,
Jason.
Mr. Supervisor. Yes, the caller's last four digits are 8764. I'll unmute that caller now.
Good afternoon, Mr. Supervisor and Town Council. This is Dave Buda. As long as you're on the topic of urban renewal road improvements, I remember in passing that there once was a mention, perhaps by Mr. Julnicki, that the consulting engineer that you're currently using had complained about people requesting and obtaining roadwork assignments and then not completing them within the, I think, the 1 year that's allowed, and then having to come back for subsequent assignments, and there being no fees or insufficient fees charged for requesting that road assignment, which obviously takes the engineer a lot of work and time to prepare, to inspect suitable sites and to make the determinations. So I'm wondering whether or not the town board should address that concern if it has not already been addressed. I do know from my interest in UR map road work assignments that there have been multiple situations where people have gone through 2, 3, even possibly 4 assignments before they actually get around to doing the work and posting the bond or paying for the work to be done. So maybe John has some comments on that. It's something that perhaps needs to be addressed as well.
Well, David, to your point, I think that is something we should look at, because what happens is people are looking for the assignments and it generates a cost from the engineer to make those inspections and those calculations. And in some cases, they're not really applications as much as they're speculative, and people want to know what it would cost to do the road improvements as they consider purchasing a property, or if they're talking to someone about selling the property. So that is something that was brought up, and I think something we need to address as well.
Okay. Now is a good a time as any. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, David.
There are no
Thanks,
other
John.
callers.
John, do you have anything else to add on that comment by Mr. Buda?
No, I know on occasion it's a problem. Sometimes people, they obtain an assignment intending to proceed and they don't. Other times I believe we've had requests that are made by brokers on behalf of property owners to get an idea as to what the cost would be for the improvements. I'm not sure how you limit that. I guess
you could make the call application rather than just the assignment.
Yeah. I think certainly making this change we're talking about would certainly make the estimates more realistic, and then so people would be more likely to actually do the work if they have an accurate estimate on the cost and they decide to proceed anyway with the acquisition of the property. But I think that just shows part of the problems where people go and get these estimates and they're trying to finance the improvements and they find out that these costs are so much more than what was estimated for the bond that it really maybe makes it undoable for some people. So I think at least this is a step in the right direction, but we can certainly look at what we could do to really, maybe the building inspector we're going to talk to next might have a thought as to what we could do process-wise to kind of make these real estimates rather than just speculative estimates for people.
Well, I mean, you could charge an application fee that would just
yeah,
and that basically you would, if they go forward with the work, you give them a credit back on that application fee, and that would alleviate, the people kicking the tires.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. I can ask the engineer what amount of time he thinks he spends on an assignment and get an estimate on the cost.
Just have that, application fee such that it's not worthwhile to just, if you're not serious about doing it, you only get it refunded or credited if you go forward with the work.
Mm-hmm.
Make that application fee high enough to alleviate those circumstances.
I'll speak to him.
One possible solution.
Yeah. I'll try to find out what's involved and time-wise on this and see if we can get an estimate on the value that we can talk about.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this topic before we move on?
No.
Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
No, we do not.
Okay, let's move on to our last agenda item, which is legislation for pool houses. And we have with us Ann Glennon, our principal building inspector, and John Julnicki,
Okay, so this is a revision to Chapter 255. You're familiar with, I think, some of the situations that have been shown to the board with regard to these pool houses that are made parts of another building. And so and Nancy Lynn's worked with Ann in developing a revision to this code that basically speaks to what the town code already calls appendages to buildings. And what the proposed revision does is first in the gross floor area portion of the code, it speaks to non-habitable buildings, including pool houses, and what constitutes gross floor area and what does not. And excluded from that gross floor area, at least in the first revision under gross floor area, it speaks to an open air appendage to a building as long as it doesn't have basically more than 2 shared walls. I think you saw an example of a situation where there were 3 walls to a building, which kind of lends itself to possibly some future abuse with an enclosure to part of the building, which would make a much larger accessory building than what we allow under the town code presently. And so that thought was that revision was to address that kind of a situation. You can have these kind of shared use buildings where your pool house maybe shares a wall with another building and maybe has another wall, but then the other 2 areas are open. And do you have anything on that you want to add, or? Oh, can't hear you.
And you're muted. You have to unmute, Ian.
You're muted.
Oop.
Still muted.
We're having some technical difficulties. And do you see the little microphone icon at the bottom? There you go. Okay.
There you are.
And
We still can't hear you.
What happened?
Uh-oh. I guess it's the new cam.
Excuse me, everyone, just to say, if for some reason she can't get her mic to work, and you can just call the phone number, we can hear you that way. The phone number is 351-888-6331. And I'll
Can you just repeat that one more time?
Sure, it's 351-888-6331.
Thank you for troubleshooting that, Mike.
No problem. I'll wait, and the second I see the number come up, I'll let you right in.
So as I understand it, the pool houses, for instance, are supposed to be accessory structures of a certain size. They're supposed to be standalone, and what's happening is some people are kind of skirting that in a way by connecting them to other structures, whether it be a garage or other accessory detached building. And whereas the code really says that they have to be standalone buildings separated by at least 5 feet, but there is the allowance of a breezeway, I guess, if I'm understanding it correctly. You can only use the 2 existing exterior walls of the 2 buildings being joined by the breezeway. And if you add a third, that's the issue that we're looking to address.
Well, yeah. Well, the 5-foot separation that's actually noted too in the accessory building section where we talk about separation, and this is really to codify what has been the process in the past, just to really clarify that in fact you have to have a 5-foot separation between buildings. But yeah, sorry. Okay. So.
Excuse me, everybody. This is Mike from LTV. Ann, can you please turn down the broadcast? I'm going to mute you for a second. Ann has connected through the phone line. It's just that the broadcast of our meeting can't be live around you as well as it can only be on the phone. Okay, John, go ahead.
Turn your computer volume down and just
Thank
use
you.
the
If you
phone.
want to just double check, and you can just test that you're there. I unmuted you.
Yes, I'm there.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. Okay,
Hey,
good.
I'm here.
Good.
Go ahead, John.
So yes, I mean you can utilize you can utilize breezeways to connect buildings, but basically you're making it part of the principal structure, if I understand correctly. And isn't that the case? I mean, use a breezeway to connect it to the house, then you don't have the accessory building issue any longer. But the problem with these accessory buildings is they're not viewed as habitable space, and they're not regulated as habitable space. I don't believe they have the same fire code requirements, and so that's why this is of concern. When they start to become buildings that have not really habitable, that people are sleeping in them, but they're certainly utilizing them for a good part of the day, you start to have concerns about it becoming more like a habitable building. And if you have a 600 square foot accessory building, you can have a 200 square foot pool house. They can start to become basically cottages almost. And so that's some of the concerns that we're trying to address here.
So the issue is that a pool house, which is limited to 200 square feet, might be
Right.
connected to another accessory building, 600, thereby negating the limit on accessory buildings of 600 feet, or in the case of pool house, 200 feet. So this is looking to address that issue.
Yeah, I mean, pool houses, you can have, you're allowed to have a bathroom, bath and shower facilities in a pool house. So there's a potential there for it being used in a way it's not intended to. We were actually talking earlier, and this is something that we would probably like to get the board's feedback on. At the present time, we're not including in gross floor area of a pool house. If you have an outdoor area and you have only those two walls, we're not including, what do we call them, patios and screened-in porches in the overall gross floor area. But we wanted to really see what the board's thoughts were on that, because maybe we should consider that part of the gross floor area of a pool house or of an accessory structure. And you had some thoughts or concerns about that, I thought, right? You want to explain?
Can you
Yes.
Can you attach a screened-in porch to your pool house?
Yes. It's considered open air appendix.
Yeah.
All screened, no walls. Has to be all screened and no walls, correct, Ann?
Well, no, because you have that one wall that's connected to the house.
Yeah, but that's not,
So
that's the pool house or the house wall. It's an existing.
I meant the accessory structure, sorry. They build it outside of the
It's attached
building.
to the exterior wall of an accessory structure. It's allowable as long as the other remaining area isn't walled in, correct?
Correct. So the issue is a couple of them we've been going to, and where we've had inspections, they're so large with fireplaces, workout rooms, extremely, there's no health and safety going on for if somebody should live in it or sleep in it. And those are the concerns that we've been having. And you can build a residence at 600 square feet. So I just recently had one I sent to Sylvia Overby showing whole living areas, screened-in porch, covered deck. So is it really just 600 square feet anymore? And health and safety, smokes, carbon dioxide. The only thing we have for accessory structures is they can't have plumbing. They can do everything else.
But Ann, are we talking about open air covered roofed over patios? What are you talking about here? Are you talking about actual walls on these structures or no?
I guess I was trying to limit it, the whole building to 600 square feet for an accessory structure instead of GFA.
So at what point are you going to start counting like pool patios as part of the gross floor area of a pool house? I mean, that
Right,
doesn't
no.
seem.
Yeah.
So how do we, I think I'm still trying to understand what the concern is. If it's an open air, I mean, you're not worried about people sleeping in a screen porch, are you? And I mean, people.
No, what it is, I guess it's the interior of the accessory structure I'm concerned with.
The roofed area.
Interior, so on a pool house, the interior area is limited. It's actually less than 200 square feet because you measure to the outside walls. So it's roughly 200 square feet. People are allowed that, and they're allowed to have plumbing and a single appliance like a refrigerator in a pool house. So we're not talking about increasing the square footage of that, right? So the concern is that somehow the concern is
the way they rewrote it is good.
So the concern is that some other accessory structures being attached to a pool house, thereby increasing it.
Yes.
So how is it?
Exercise room.
Are you talking about a screened-in porch attached to the pool house? Are you talking about a structure that has its own walls? Because to me, you just can't have another structure attached to a pool house if it's a standalone. If it's not the principal structure. Why wouldn't that alone be enough to limit?
So I guess where the mix-up is a little bit, the pool house, the way they wrote it with the open air so that people could have roofed over patios, I think is great, where they can't close it in. But do you also have accessory structures which are totally different? That's the one I'm really concerned with.
So accessory structures are limited to 600 square feet, right? And they have to be detached, correct? In order to be considered an accessory structure. And what you do with that 600 feet, as long as you're not putting a kitchen and a bathroom in it, the code doesn't really address that, right? So the concern is that people are attaching the accessory structures to pool houses?
No. Like I said, the 600 square foot accessory structure is something totally different that I'm talking about.
Okay, I guess I'm really confused as to what we're trying to do here today. And without any sort of examples, visual aids or whatnot, I think I'm having trouble understanding what the concern is. It seems to me that we have limits on accessory structures and that they're even more restrictive when it's called a pool house because it allows for bathroom. The intent of the code was to not allow for accessory structures to become dwelling units unto themselves or habitable space. And there's some concern that somehow there's a loophole in the code that people are stretching the limits of what the language says. And
well, the accessory structures are becoming, they're insulated, they're sheetrock, they're electric and heat, and even fireplaces at some points. The only thing they don't have is plumbing.
Okay, under the code, is that all acceptable under the code currently? It's allowed, right?
I think, Ann, you're basically saying this exception for the open air appendages should be restricted just to the pool houses and not to the accessory buildings. And right now it seems that gross floor area, they're just excluded from gross floor area in either case. So we should call it out that it should just be pool houses. Is that the thought? And if it's related to an accessory building that's not a pool house, then they have to be counted in the total gross floor area of the building. That's pretty much what I understood you to be saying, right?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
Why don't we bring this back next week and have some examples, and we'll get IT to fix Ann's, because it's hard when there's a delay and whatnot.
and I do have some.
We need some visual.
Examples so that we can understand what the concern is and how we might address it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Let me see if so, what Ann had sent me was an accessory structure that looks like it's got, it's got plumbing in it. It just doesn't, it looks like a cottage. Right now it says it's got a sofa in it, but the sofa could become something else. Got a kitchen area. And then attached to it is a screen porch, quote unquote, pool area. So, I think we need to look at accessory structures as well, Ann. I think it's really encompassing both issues, not just the one. I don't think we can look at one or the other.
Is that building you just referred to deemed a pool house? Is that what's going on there?
I'm not sure if this is considered a proposed ground floor. I'm looking at the plan that she sent. It doesn't say on the plan exactly what it is.
It was an accessory structure.
Not a pool.
So why don't we reconvene? Let's reconvene on this topic. We'll try to get some visual renderings to describe what the concern is, as well as look at the code sections.
Maybe we can have some alternatives as far as the code language goes too, for different outcomes.
I guess I'm just really trying to understand what the problem is that we're trying to address, and what the concern is.
Yeah, I'd like to take a look at this, but also include, as I said, those accessory structures. And we don't say, a property could have a lot of accessory structures.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to understand what that does to, the properties and the eventual.
You're getting into like the gross building area, coverage building and lot coverage. I mean, there are limitations already in the code on that.
Right.
The accessory structures are limited to 600 feet and they can't be used for habitable space dwelling. No kitchens, no bathrooms. The exceptions of bathrooms are pool houses, which have to be under 200 square feet, and artist studios, which may have a sink.
Right.
There's only two accessory structures that are allowed any kind of plumbing. So I don't know what exactly we're trying to further restrict in the code. So I think it's helpful to understand what the concerns are. If people are habitating in accessory structures, contrary to what the code and the law allows, then they should just get cited. I don't know that it requires further restriction of the code. So I think I just want to get a handle as to what the concern is. So let's reconvene next week on the topic. Maybe we can have some visual renderings of both like floor plan and elevations and what the concern is, and we can take the matter up again.
So, Ann, do you have more than just this one that you can look at? That's more the one that you sent me.
No, I can probably put a couple more together. Sure.
Okay. And then in the field, can you write up a memo of what you're actually observing when you go there? Because I know it's a safety concern. I know that you feel that people can live in these structures. And I think we need to understand that as well.
Sure.
Okay. Well, we look forward to that topic being brought back again next week. At this point, do we have any callers on the line, Mike?
Yes, we just received one new caller. I will bring that caller in just a moment. The last four digits of this caller's number are 2 677. I'll unmute that caller now.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. How are you? It's Tina Piet.
Hi, Tina. How are you?
I'm good. Excellent. Thank you. So I was just watching this discussion, and I had a concern about process. Maybe I'm reading into this too much, but it seems to me that there might be specific applications pending that our principal building inspector is not comfortable issuing a building permit for. And I don't know that this is an appropriate referral to a town board member to ask for instructions on an application.
Yeah, I don't know
if that makes sense to everyone.
Yeah, I don't know that that's the case, Tina. You know, I think this is more of a generic conversation about, I think, trends, but we'll get further clarification for next week's board meeting, because I think it's important for the board members to really understand what the potential issue might be.
You know, I'm not representing anybody in this. I'm just watching, and I don't, if it's the case that there's actually an application pending, or as you pointed out, Supervisor, if it's a code enforcement issue, it's a code enforcement issue. It's kind of disturbing to me that a question goes to a town councilwoman. My gut says this is a situation that's very specific. And I want to be on the record saying I just don't think that this is the appropriate way. Ms. Glennon is going to have to make a decision. And if it's something that is pending, this isn't the process. And if it's something that's already occurred and it's a violation, then it's a violation. So I appreciate the open discussion about this, because I will be watching next week. You are talking about changing something that if somebody's concerned about safety, limiting, again, what I'm hearing is limiting again 600 square feet and then including a deck or not including a deck in GFA. It's a very complicated issue, and I just think everybody, including myself and the public, should be very clear about what the impetus is for this discussion.
Well, I think
that's all, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks for calling in, Tina. I think, you know, the board's come to the conclusion we need a little more clarity on what the topic of discussion actually is and what the concern might be. So again, we'll take a look next week at this matter. I'm not aware of any application, if you will. I only know that there was some interest in perhaps clarifying the existing code to better reflect the intent, but again, we'll reconvene and have further discussion on next week.
Okay, thanks. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks for calling in, Tina.
I just want to make clear, that it was an issue was sent to me and to the attorney's office. It wasn't sent to me as something that I need to champion. It was something that was asking questions, and as someone who works with the planning department, I understand why it was sent to me and why it was sent to John and why Nancy Lynn Thiel worked on it. And I think we still have a lot more questions. I am not championing anything except clarity for the for both people that build things and the builders that build them, so that we make sure that these things are done accurately and safely.
And I think that, you know, as far as I know, this is not, there may be certain applications and trends that have happened in past times that have raised concerns in the building inspector's view. And you know, the attempt was to clarify what has been understood to be the rules in the past and to make these regulations clear to the public, and to see if the board has any concerns about changing those. I'm not aware of this being at all aimed at a particular application that's pending. I don't think there's any applications that are being held waiting for code changes. If that's the implication that's being made, I don't think that's the case. I'm not aware of it.
I would agree with John. I think that's absolutely the correct focus. Yeah, sure, we can't target a particular application or hold it up, but this seems to be raising sort of a generic policy problem. And if history has suggested to Anne that we could, need some revisions to the code to clarify and tighten it up on a broad basis, that's a rational basis to proceed and perfectly appropriate. So I don't sense that there's any forbidden motivation here, which would be targeting a particular application.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
Yes, we do. I have another caller with the last 4 digits of 1522. I'll unmute that caller now.
Good afternoon. Hi there. This is Tim Boulder with Dan's Papers calling. Sorry if this has been asked and answered. I missed the first few minutes of the meeting, but I hadn't heard this come up yet, so I was just checking to see if there's any indication at this point if the board plans to pass an opt-out on the recreational marijuana law that recently passed.
Hi, Tim. Yeah, I actually was going to bring up the topic in my liaison report later in the meeting. We haven't had any discussion as a board yet. This is something that has just recently occurred. As you know, the governor's passed the legislation legalizing marijuana for New York State. And it's something that there's no real urgency. I don't think that we have to act right away. And I think we'll take a very measured approach and educate ourselves as to the implications of this. I can speak personally and say that I do think decriminalization of marijuana is a good move. But as far as, business opportunities and source of revenue, I think that's something that I have a lot of questions about still, what the potential impact of pot shops in town might be. So, for me personally, I'm going to take a slow approach and try to educate myself as best as I can. And, we'll have discussions among the board members in the future.
Yeah, I jumped in on that and actually spoke to Tim previously and had a very similar reaction. That I welcome it. I think it's a very good measure to decriminalize it. It wasn't more than 3 or 4 days ago that a person in the state of Texas was arrested for possession of marijuana and didn't make it out alive from custody. So bad things can happen to people who are using a pretty innocuous drug. But the other issues about places of sale for marijuana products and places for recreational use are probably a little bit more tricky and relate to, potential community impacts. And, I agree with Peter that we have time. We don't need to make an instant decision. It's something we should really think about carefully. But I really applaud it. And frankly, never really expected to see it in my lifetime, despite the great pressure. So I do think it's a very good reform. It tends to disparately impact people of color and people at lower socioeconomic levels, and they get really slammed. So that's a good step, good first step.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we have an end of 2021 in which to make a decision about opting out. So, we have plenty of time to give this a lot of thought and have public discussion and debate about.
Okay. And I'm sure you heard that the head of the Town Supervisors Association for Suffolk County was calling for an island-wide opt-out. You guys are not committing to signing on to that idea? Is that what I'm hearing?
I don't think we're committing to anything right now. I think we want to, again, take a careful look and engage the public in a discussion about this prior to acting. And we're going to take our time I will be attending as part of the Suffolk Supervisors presentation by both the proponents and the opponents to this legislation and whether or not to opt out. And, we'll continue to inform ourselves what the implications are. There are a lot of unanswered questions about how this will be managed and how the state will, in fact, license these facilities, what the expected costs and revenues might be. So I think there's a lot of unanswered questions, and we'll take our time.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tim. Be well. Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
Yes, we do. We have another caller with the last 4 digits, 8764. I'll unmute that caller now.
Good afternoon again. It's David Buda. On the prior conversation with regard to potential code changes dealing with pool houses and accessory structures, I think it is an important area that requires clarification, and certainly having concrete examples in front of you would enable you to deal with it more intelligently as legislators. I do want to point out that it's an appropriate thing for the town board to be considering, even if there may be ZBA applications for variances pending that might have triggered some of the concern. That doesn't change the need to look at and clarify legislation that is town-wide and prospective in application. I think there are issues as to whether or not roofed-over appendages to pool houses can have more than 2 walls. That is an issue that apparently has come up. And I think you should also coordinate this discussion in the next week with perhaps someone from ordinance enforcement, because I believe that there have been in the past many situations where accessory structures have been improperly converted into habitable space, and perhaps they have some insights into why and how it happens and how to avoid it in the future. It's rare that someone actually makes an application for a proper permit for an accessory apartment in an accessory building, which is now allowed. What is more often, from what I see, is, for example, a structure that's built as a garage becomes a fully occupied habitable space, and you have to wonder what's happening to the plumbing and the sewerage and the septic waste from that inhabitant of the garage. So you might want to consider broadening your perspective and dealing with calling in someone from ordinance enforcement to throw in his 2 cents in terms of observations and possible need for extensive legislative improvements. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Michael, do we have any other callers on the line?
No, we do not.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to move on to liaison reports. And
Great.
Kat, do you have a liaison report for us today?
I do. Again, as I usually start my liaison reports for folks out there, Human Services Department continues to provide assistance to seniors and other community members in need. We continue to deliver 5 frozen meals to seniors. Currently, we're delivering about 1,350 meals per week. And we're still checking in on our seniors with wellness calls and picking up prescriptions and whatnot. So if folks, are in need of their services, please reach out at 631-329-6939. We've gotten some inquiries about our seniors and the vaccine. So Human Services personnel have been helping seniors schedule their vaccine appointments. Staff has reached out to seniors on Meals with Wheels. We coordinating very closely with Meals on Wheels, and they asked us to check in on their seniors, and we did. And what we learned is that most of those seniors contacted have either received the vaccine or have a plan in place to get the vaccine. Our staff has also contacted the 750 plus seniors that are on the town's list. And what we've learned is basically what we learned with the seniors that are getting Meals on Wheels is that either family has helped seniors get to a vaccine site, or they've been contacted by their local doctors who are also providing vaccines. And bottom line is we've not found a large number of homebound seniors who have not been served. And we have been recommending that those seniors that are truly homebound reach out to their personal physician. A couple weeks back, the Disabilities Advisory Board met, and we have a new member representing East Hampton Village. That's Tom Priata. He's now with the village as their building inspector. And I just want to say how grateful we've been to Ken Cullum, who has represented the village, at least for the 8 years that I've been on a liaison to the Disability Advisory Board. And we really appreciate the thoughtfulness and, the information that Ken always brought to us. Also in that same meeting, we had discussions that, continue to revolve around how we can make East Hampton more accessible for those with disabilities. A couple weeks back, again, the spring CAC met, and we had an invited guest and received a terrific presentation from Edwina von Gaal about a new project she's involved with about nature-based landscaping. It's called 2/3 for the Birds. Come to learn that North America has lost close to 3 billion birds since the 1970s, almost a third of the entire bird population. And it's not just rare or endangered birds that we're losing. Our familiar backyard songbird populations are disappearing too. And the die-off is primarily attributed to the loss of habitat and the use of pesticides. It's because our yards are filled with exotic plants and they're empty of insects. And our birds have fewer and fewer bugs and berries to eat, no cavities for nesting, and no thickets for protection from predators. So what we discussed at the CAC was that we can turn this around by changing the way that we garden. We can provide sufficient habitat to restore the bird population if we plant 70% of our yards with native plants. That will help us to maintain and bring back healthy population of birds. So basically the mantra is plant it and they will come. Plant 2 native plants for every 3 plants that go into your yard, and use no pesticides. So there's a website that folks can go to. It's 234birds.org, 2/3 for the birds, 234birds.org to learn more. We also discussed at the CAC a beach cleanup that they want to hold for Earth Day on Saturday, April 24th. They've identified 3 locations: Girard Drive, Louse Point, and Maidstone Beach, and they've got team captains for each of those beaches. And if folks that are listening want to participate, they should reach out to Lauren Bolger. At our upcoming meeting on Tuesday, April 27th, we're expecting a presentation from Spring School Superintendent Deb Winter. The CAC invites the school, just before the May budget vote each year. So Deb will be giving us a short presentation and taking questions on the 2021-2022 school budget. And we're also asking for an update on the construction, and particularly how it's going to relate to the new traffic pattern up at the school. The Special Events Committee, it's that time again. We're meeting weekly. Currently, applicants are submitting emails detailing their event and looking for guidance from the town. We've been overwhelmed with phone calls and requests. And so moving forward, and given the volume of inquiries we're receiving, we're directing applicants to review the New York State guidance and submit applications based on what they believe is allowed under the state guidance, and the committee will review their applications. We have reviewed applications for both the Springs and Montauk farmers markets, and we approved them. The same protocols are in place for last year, with the 10-foot spacing between the different booths and one-way traffic flow and whatnot. But what we have seen is that both farmers markets have asked for extended seasons. Springs is going to start a little bit earlier. They're going to start Saturday, May 1st, and go through the end of October from 9 to 1. And Montauk is looking to extend it on the back end. They're looking to start June 3rd and go until November 19th. And their market runs from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. So I'll have a resolution on to approve those permits at our April 15th meeting. And then just as an aside, I had to stop by town hall on Sunday. I think it was around 6 o'clock, and the lights were on along the walkway. I guess they haven't been, modified for the daylight savings. So maybe we want to do that and have them come on a little bit later in the evening. And then I had the privilege of attending iTry's mentoring day. And here it was something, I'm thinking I'm going to be giving back to the young middle school girls that are going through the program and training for the triathlon. And instead, I got more than I think back than they did. And they ran a beautiful program. And, if Sylvia, I don't know if you ever have an opportunity to be part, I know we did it in the past, live and in person when we were in the middle school, but it's just so heartwarming, and it's, a tremendous program. And my hat's off to Teresa and her team for what they do to build resiliency in our young women, particularly, at a time like this. So that's my report for today.
Thank you, Kathy. That's great. David, do you have a liaison report for us?
Yes, thank you. Last week, the members of the Fisheries Advisory Committee met. We once again had James Gilmore, who's the Director of Marine Resources, sitting on our meeting. He answered many of the members' questions, concerns, and had a nice dialogue. He advised us that George LaPointe, who is a marine fisheries consultant, well-versed in marine fisheries issues, he assisted the DEC with reviewing and potentially revising and giving recommendations for the licensing of commercial fishing activities in New York State. There's a couple of options that he's looking to move on, such as transfer of commercial licenses to others, and then also one that the town board, as she had discussed and sent a letter of support in, is to give a medical waiver for individuals that have commercial licenses review. So we discussed that. And how to make that a little bit more streamlined. We discussed again how our fisheries and some of our individuals at Homeport in East Hampton might are a little bit concerned or looking for some more information from the state about the artificial reef program. And he stated that they're working together with another member of the Marine Resources Advisory Council to gather information about their trip data, VR data about any of the individuals that actually fish over some of these areas and how it might affect them personally. So that's going to be a continuing conversation. There's also a need for legislation action on Jonah crab. Fishermen with state only permits for Jonah crab, but no federal lobster permits are needed. So Senator Comiskey and others are pushing for in the Senate, but they're going to bring some information potentially to the town board about their recommendation. Maybe we can send a letter in for that when that comes forward. I discussed this in the past. It sort of got stalled with COVID, but we've been working on a working waterfront fisheries analysis for the town of East Hampton. It's very similar to what Southampton has done recently, in which we target local properties which have had historical use for our shoreside fisheries infrastructure. Noting that there's been a lot of real estate transfers recently in the entire township of East Hampton, from the retail end to the docking to the pack houses, to have a potential document that might locate some of these areas so the town board knows about them, that might be included in some of our discussion for our regulatory boards. So we're going to continue to move forward with that and hopefully get to the town board in the next couple of months. I think it's very important to get that forward, with particularly the boom in real estate transfers recently. We also discussed pork rinds and circle hook issues, and Director Gilmore specifically stated that that's mostly a commercial fishing issue, not a commercial issue, but we do have a lot of commercial fishing. That's a recreational fishing issue, not a commercial issue. And it mostly comes back to mortality rate from their use. And recreational striped bass fishery will be required to use circle hooks starting April 1st for the Hudson River, and then April 15th for the rest of the fishery, which will incorporate a lot of individuals that come out here to use our beaches to fish from shore.
Those circle hooks are for use with when using bait, correct? It's not artificial lures.
Well, that's the question right now. It's that they were looking to incorporate pork rinds onto that also as to be a bait that couldn't be used. I'll circulate some more information on that from the board, but that already got passed. We did hear from our commercial offshore chartermen that they were not did not want the state to move forward on that, and the state did not move forward on that. But I'll get you the exact language to you, Peter, or anyone that has any questions, they can contact myself on that too. Director Gilmore, we also discussed that there's a new energy areas within the New York Bight that are opening up recently. Dan Farnham mentioned and requested that we get ahead of the issues as far as transit lanes with some help with the DEC, and Director Gilmore is now having his staff working on that fishery and offshore wind development issues. And we requested that any minutes of those meetings come to the FAC just for review and comments. And Director Gilmore is more than happy to help. Again, it was a very cordial, nice conversation. There are a bunch of changes to commercial fishing quotas that are upcoming right now. So please be cognizant of that if you're in the commercial fishing industries. But even more importantly right now, I want to make sure that anyone that's in the commercial fishing industry understands that NOAA has just recently allotted another, they announced to the federal government through the CARES Act, the Coronavirus Aid and Relief and Economic Security Act, that there's an additional $255 million in fisheries assistance funding for this act. And specifically in New York State, it's just a little over $5.6 million. This application has to be, I believe it has to be in before September of this year. So if you have any questions or concerns, please contact my office and we'll get you that help with that application. Lastly, we just received notice that in accordance with case 18-T-0604, the joint proposal certificate, condition 137, that there's a draft fisheries study work plan for the South Fork export cable. That has actually been sent out to the Fisheries Advisory Committee for review and comments. And those review and comments and edits will have to be coming in by April 12th. So they have that now in their emails and going forward. The DEC is starting to resume in-person hunting education courses. So if there's anyone interested in instructor-led hunter education program, it begins April 1st with COVID safety protocols in place. I would go to the DEC's website for further information on that. Peter, I don't want to steal this from you if you're going to bring it up, but it was discussed at the Montauk.
Go ahead, David. Go for it.
The Montauk CAC discussed the Excelsior Pass, which is a pass the New York State has with information for individuals that either have been tested for coronavirus or also that have been fully vaccinated. And it's one of these great ways to get ready to potentially reopen our commerce in a very safe and effective way. So you can go to covid19vaccine.health.ny.gov/Excelsior-pass.
I have to say that my kids used it. They went to Yankee Stadium on Tuesday. They had to go get a negative COVID test at the town site and then downloaded that into the Excelsior Pass. And apparently it was a breeze getting into Yankee Stadium. Granted, it was 20% capacity, but very easy.
We just need a victory is what we need.
Yeah, I was going to say
Let's get a victory for the
They were unhappy with the results of the game, but they were happy with
long season. It's a long season. Well, into recreation, Department of Recreation. I want to let everyone know that Department of Recreation is consistently looking for summer help for summer recreational attendance and also seasonal lifeguards. So please contact John Rooney at the Recreation Department at 631-324-4141 if you have any interest. I also want to let the board know that the fields are being prepped and prepared by Buildings and Grounds for Little League, the start of Little League right now. Under COVID protocols that East Hampton Little League has provided to the town and been reviewed by Dr. Polsky. The fields are being rolled for safety, fences are being checked, and I will be taking my daughter to Little League a little bit later today. So I thank you very much, and so do the parents. That was a discussion at yesterday also. I want to let the board know that I reconvened the ad hoc beach advisory committee that made up of members of our different departments of our town, just to get prepared and discussion for our upcoming summer season. We discussed any changes or non-changes in the governor's executive orders. We discussed our beach operating plan from 2020 and what the recommendations still potentially will be for 2021. We also discussed the staffing needs, again, lifeguards, custodial needs, parks, recreation. And this is just an opening conversation. And we're going to meet again in a couple of weeks, and we'll bring some more information to the board. But I want to let the board know that we're actively moving and engaging forward on this, and not, unfortunately, like we did last year, had to do it a little late in the season. We're also looking at different 2021 initiatives for the beaches. Of course, enforcement. I've talked with Sylvia about using radio ads for COVID beach safety, and also just quality of life safety, such as beach fires and such. We were talking also initiatives maybe about how we might have to close parking downtown mall and talk in certain areas capacity. Do we use parking meters if we can't find attendance in Kirk Park or potentially other locations then too? How would this all flow for this summer season? And that's a rolling conversation that will bring more information to the board. The Montauk CAC met last night. We had a great showing. It's always active there. Two of the major discussions were, the first one was about FIP, and then the beach replenishment, which I have informed every committee that the board went out to the sand replenishment at the bid last week, which will be coming back for April 8th, as determined within our beach stabilization project from the Army Corps of Engineers. They are sorely disappointed at the Army Corps of Engineers and for punting our installation of our sands and to contract 3 instead of upfront. I've explained how the supervisor's office has been constantly contacting state senators, congressmen, and all elected officials to make sure they see what the priority of our town is right now, how upset we are. Their beach subcommittee put a motion up to a vote. We'll probably get that in writing shortly, but I'll read it out. The Montauk CAC, this is the motion that was approved 29-0. The Montauk CAC is urging East Hampton Town Board to request the Army Corps of Engineers, as promised, to adhere to their Fire Island to Montauk Point project to pump 450,000 cubic yards of ocean dredged sand on 6,000 feet of downtown beach in Montauk in late 2021, early 2022, as per its approved original project dates. So they are actively engaged in that, and you might hear from some of the members of that community, of the CAC, but they want to make sure that they know that the board has their support to actively engage everyone who might take to get us back early in the queue for FIMP.
We have been lobbying very hard to get the Army Corps to move up the timeline. They are not likely to be able to do anything by 21, 22 early because their milestones of having the project at least 30% design ready is the threshold by which they can start letting particular projects. That they're probably 7 months out still on that. But I've met directly with the Corps and with the Deputy County Exec in a meeting with our legislator, Bridget Fleming, and the DEC. They're well aware of our concerns. And when I showed them photographs and we had a further discussion with their engineers, they understood the importance of getting the Montauk project started as soon as possible. There are some issues with the type of equipment that would be doing the restoration work, the replenishment in Montauk. It's a hopper dredge, and they have coupled our project with Southampton, which is probably part of the reason for the delay, because Southampton will require around 500 easements to be secured, and we need only 15. So we've been working with them to figure out if there's an alternative approach to allow us to proceed ahead of Southampton, or a way to move Southampton forward. We could shave potentially a year off And I don't think we'd be able to do better than that. But, 1 year makes a huge difference. It's probably $1 million worth of savings to the town and the county.
Well, I thank you for that, Peter, and definitely the members of the Montauk CAC also appreciate your hard work moving that forward. And again, $1 million, $1 million saved on that project. And please let my office know however I can assist you with that. The Montauk CAC, they also have a subcommittee, an airport subcommittee. They had a discussion about how the effects of the FAA grant assurances expiring in the East Hampton Airport could potentially affect the Montauk Airport. This has been ongoing for a while. I think we all know that they are very astute to what happens in East Hampton could affect the Montauk Airport and their quality of life. A member of the Montauk Airport Subcommittee did put a motion forward for a vote, which passed 27 yes and 2 abstentions. The motion was as follows. The motion is for the East Hampton Town Board to take no action to close the East Hampton Airport. And that was the motion that was passed by the committee, 27 yes, 2 abstentions. Just to let the board know, we should be receiving that from also the chairwoman of the Montauk CAC shortly. As I brought up in my liaison to the committee yesterday, I want to also members of the public know that the Army Corps of Engineers project has started out at the Montauk Lighthouse as far as their revetment. Specifically that they are putting in place, as described in the original bid packages, their public access to the beaches, either to North Bar to the surfers or to the southern area to surfers in safe, dedicated locations. So they are mobilizing, but there'll be safe access to the locations that were described in the project scope, and that's moving forward also currently right now. Highways in Montauk specifically, they're doing 1,000 feet of highway extension out there on Old Montauk Highway, which brings us up past Washington Street. The Montauk CAC was greatly appreciative of that. And also, I'll let the board know that paving season's about to start out here. That will be starting sometime by the end of this month into next month, millions of pavings and many roads in the town of East Hampton. Steve Lynch does a wonderful job as our highway superintendent on that, but there might be a little disruption, of course, when that's being done. But I think the end result is worth it for most of the community there. We had a couple of conversations about at the Montauk dump right now. There has been trees being removed there. That is through a building permit right now for the installation of the new cell phone tower that's going to be going out the Montauk dump. We are aware at the town board and through discussions with Eddie Schnell that the access way to the dump is going to be shifted over a little bit to the east, and that elicited some removal of stumps and trees to get the larger tower in there, part of our emergency communication package, which I believe they're going to start drilling for tomorrow, which is great. Harbors and docks, we are just recently completing repairs to the pier at Rods Valley, Eddie Ecker Pier, that is called. Also ahead of the harbor, Gann Road going back and forth, the replacement of some pylons that had heaved up and down in the ice. And also Chief Ed Michaels assisting with some of the piling safety buddies, which will help the longevity of our pilings and our infrastructure projects. So that those are happening at some of our docks. And then also at Second House, I met with members of the Montauk Historical Society. We're going to move forward. I thank Peter and the rest of the board for approving the bonding to move forward with drainage and outdoor site work at this location, electrical work. And also we're going to move forward with the septic upgrade of that structure to continue on with that restoration of that project. Lastly, if you just give me a moment here. In 1961, my father, Abdul Hakim Lubiz, immigrated from an island archipelago country in Southeast Asia named Indonesia to seek a better life, escape political upheaval, and provide for his family. In the 60-plus years since then, he has assimilated to a new country, new language, new religious majorities, new difficulties, and even a new name. One thing that he did not change was his ingrained attitude of hard work, respect for others, and a sense of pride and community. If you ask my father about his ethnicity, he will tell you sheepishly that he's Indonesian, but also very loud and proudly that he is an American. He moved to East Hampton with his bride-to-be to start a new life and a family. He moved here because of a simpler life that was out east and availability to prosper. If you worked hard and you gave other human beings respect, you would also want to be the respect that you would want to be treated with also. My dad is a humble man. He and myself have stayed in our wonderful community because of the lack of discourteous community members to people of different color, faith, and opinion. This is what makes East Hampton so special. We as a community have to continue to always work on opening our doors and the community to others of different faiths, ethnicities, colors, and opinions. We as a community have to continue to always work to educate our youth that hate has no place in East Hampton, and that we have to treat others as you would always want to be treated. The national appalling trend of maltreatment and disrespect to those of Asian descent and other ethnicities nationally has been troubling to view recently for myself. While I have never been mistreated based on my ethnicity, and yes, I am Asian, I would be blind to state that it did not potentially happen in our community or in other areas of the country. I am completely against the mistreatment of anyone by any individual based on someone's race, ethnicity, and color of their skin. And I hope that our community continues to stand strong against the actions of hate. And I hope that our community continues to be accepting of all humans within our community for the same values of respect and hard work in which my Asian father determined existed in East Hampton over 50 years ago when he laid down roots here in his family's hometown. Thank you.
David, what a wonderful tribute to your father, and the sentiment about racism and mistreatment of others. And just want to say that I'm thankful to your father for bestowing upon us Councilman David Lees. So thank you. Your mother too, obviously.
She gets some credit.
Absolutely. She should get some credit as well. Thank you, David. Let's see. Sylvia.
Well, that's a really hard act to follow. And, I know your dad not well. I know your mom better. And, they represent what East Hampton's all about. So thank them for what they've done for our community, because without people like them, we wouldn't be who we are. So anyway, I'll get emotional about it. So, between Kathy and I try, and it's just, it can get,
I cry, I think.
Yeah. So let me start out with the Wainscott CAC meeting that was on Saturday. And I was happy to see so many residents of the hamlet show up on Saturday morning. We had at least 60 plus people there that were in attendance. And I do want to thank Carolyn Logan Gluck for her efforts in managing this very large Zoom group and keeping the meeting moving forward and fair and balanced. So thank you, Carolyn. The month before, there had been some consideration to have, or that they didn't seem to know, that this group didn't seem to know what was going on at the airport and the DEC, and kind of the situation that about how the town is handling water contamination. So the current issues that were surrounding the contamination at the airport, the DEC's declaration that there is an area that is a Superfund site, and the town's response to it. So I was joined at the meeting by Nick Regano, who is the town's outside environmental counsel. And he gave a very short presentation that included the history of the use of PFAs, which are the chemicals that are contaminating the groundwater. He talked about the town's diligence and investigation of the presence of these chemicals, the town responses to the contamination by immediately working with the Suffolk County Water Authority, New York State, Suffolk County, to bring public water mains along those 9 miles of roads to the homes in Wainscott, which is all history. We hired experts, namely the well-respected environmental consultants and engineers FPM group. And we filed with the DEC as required about the Superfund site. And we are still at this point waiting for a response from the DEC. And finally, he did talk briefly about the lawsuits against the manufacturers of these chemicals that the town has initiated, and also the lawsuit that we have with the village that trying to get some reimbursement from their insurers. So these actions that we took are continuing, and we are doing this for the health of our community and the health of our constituents. And I was very happy to have Nick on the call and help us understand what's happening at the airport. There was additional concern for contamination at Wainscott Pond, and a few claims that were made, I think, need to be cleared up. It was said that it was a wildlife preserve and that contamination in the pond can flow backwards to the aquifer. So I wanted to make sure that these allegations or this information was correct. And as many of you know, Wainscott Pond is surrounded by private property and there is no public access to the pond. Kim Shaw was very helpful in finding answers along with Scott Wilson. The pond is owned by the trustees, so it cannot be a nature preserve. It is a designated New York State area of statewide significance, so it's under SASS or SAS as we call it, and it's also a scenic area of local significance. The water flow from the pond can get pulled into shallow wells, Kim said, and does not flow backwards to the aquifer as suggested. So I just wanted to make that clear to anyone from the CAC that was on that call so that they aren't concerned. There is still concern about the levels of toxicity in Wainscott Pond, and those should be addressed hopefully in the same way, perhaps, that the Friends of Georgica Pond have worked together. The Wainscott CAC unanimously favored the preservation of what they're calling the Little Farmhouse at 66 Wainscott Hollow Road. Personally, I endorse the preservation, as does Supervisor Van Scoyac, who has expressed such feelings in a previous meeting about preservation. Dennis DeAndrea gave us a little bit of a history. The man who owned the house was named Alex Dredd, and he lived there with his wife. He was a farm hand and not a migrant worker. And he worked, he believes, on both the Strong and the Hand farms. So since the meeting, I spoke with Esperanza Leon yesterday, and she, along with others, are working on ways to perhaps preserve that structure. So hopefully we'll be able to move forward. The meeting did run long, so some of the issues that seem to matter to Wainscott CAC were not actually talked about. We didn't get to talk about what's going on at the airport, the Hamlet study, and some other issues, ARB, that we're not being able to address. So I'm in discussions working to make sure that the timing is a little better and that we make sure that the presentations are fair, balanced, and we're moving forward with that. So it was, again, a good meeting, but it lasted 3 hours and a little bit longer, a few minutes over the 12, starting at 9 a.m. The Energy Sustainability Committee, the small group met. We discussed pollinator gardens at the solar array at the Acabonic site. The town needs to amend the lease agreement with the folks that have leased the site, and they are agreeable to do so, is my understanding. And then we now need to work on finding the money with Kim Shaw and the Natural Resources Department to put that pollinator garden in. Part of that site is that it is full of knotweed, and we need to make sure that that's taken out first before we put the pollinator garden in. On April 13th, the stretch code presentation with Lauren Steinberg, who has been working with Ann Glennon, will be part of the work session. So I just wanted to remind the group. Natural Resources is also working with NYSERDA on a green heating campaign that's going to be much like our Solarize and our Energize campaign. Landscaping issues also came up, and And I was happy to hear Kathy talk about Edwina Von Gall. She's also reached out to me and talked about pesticides and fertilizer overuse. And I think this all came up just because of the leaf blower as we move into, ideas on how to, of sustainability, not just energy sustainability, but sustainability overall. And Edwina said that she would help with her organization, Perfect Earth, for educational purposes for us. So we're looking forward to hopefully starting something in an educational way to understand what pesticide use really does. And we know now that it affects our bird population, so and others. Peak Savers program, all of you, I hope, remember when we did the Peak Savers load relief program last summer. We do have a check from them for $5,910. And there will be a resolution for next Thursday when we have to increase our budget line for that in order to accept the funds. So I just wanted you to know what that was about. The Business Recovery Group also met. I'm going to give you the numbers again. This is as of last Wednesday. For the hospital and for COVID. So Southampton Hospital, as of last Wednesday, had 9 COVID patients. Stony Brook had 81. And Long Island and Greenport had 3 patients. So we're still not out of the woods, and we still need to consider all of the things that keep us safe. The group asked about fireworks and whether that would happen this 4th of July. The supervisor's answer was great. He said it was aspirational and he hopes that it can happen. But we still are not able to say that firework displays will happen this year.
Yeah, I believe there was guidance on that, and they gave it a number of people that could view fireworks, which was just, we had a chuckle at the special event committee meeting when we looked at that.
Yeah, everybody else can be there. They just have to close their eyes, right?
Yeah, I think it was was it Jeff, 250 people or something could it watch the fireworks show? We were like, yeah, how does that happen?
How do you figure out who's watching?
Trying
I'm
to
here, but I'm not watching.
Right.
So, well, thanks. The group also said that the testing sites and the vaccinations are very important to continue so that for our workforce this summer and for our businesses to be able to stay open. I also had a conversation with Fred Thiel, and we were discussing the SLA and the continuing whether or not we need an emergency executive order for the SLA for our businesses that have moved to sidewalks under the DOT emergency program, which will continue for this coming summer. But we do not have any information that you'll be able to serve alcohol at those as you're moving those tables outside. So Fred is hoping to pass a bill on this issue so that the executive orders, it's not going to be subject to executive orders every few days, and that the executive orders can happen just once. And so he has asked that the town, and I've already discussed this with the supervisor as he was on the call, send a letter that the town needs an executive order from the SLA, and that we support Fred Thiel's bill that would help get us to that point. The other issue that came up with Fred was the 0.5% transfer tax for affordable housing. So he did say that Hudson Valley is also interested in having a program like this, so it may slow it down a little bit, but he's hoping not. He's very optimistic that they put this bill forward. He does believe that the governor will sign it this time. It passed both the Assembly and the Senate last year. He said right now it is on a back burner only because the budget is the first priority. Legislation will come after the budget has been moved forward. So again, Fred is optimistic, and I'll almost take that as a yes from Fred. So the music permit issue came up. I know Carol, you may want to weigh in on this. Carol has already sent the letters out for the music permits. And I think what she is not getting back is confirmation from the people that she sent the letters to. So is it my understanding, Carol, that you're going to send a second letter to people that haven't responded to you? No? Hey, you're on mute, Carol. You're still on mute.
I was not planning on it. It's their responsibility. My responsibility was to put the letter out. I mean, if I have to, I will. When I'm going to find the time for all this, I don't know. But a lot of them are bouncing back to me. They're not, the people who filled out the applications last year apparently are not the people that are responsible for them this year.
So if you'll get with me and if they're the names of the businesses, we can try to put our heads together and figure out how to get a response. Okay, I'll be happy to work with you on that, Carol.
You got to get your legislative assistant to help contact those folks, because Carol, this is her busy season, and I know they have a huge backlog of permits and whatnot to issue.
Yes, so that is my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Sylvia. Jeff?
Sylvia, can I just ask one question on that, Sylvia? I had a question from a restaurant owner about tents, and that the state COVID policy last year did allow for a tent, but our pilot outdoor dining program only allows for a temporary tent, being 2 months. Did you hear anything about, Fred, about that within there, about allowing for longer periods of having outdoor dining with tents this year?
I don't know. No, I didn't ask him the question, but I can.
That'd be appreciated. Thank you very much. And only specifically for COVID relief.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah.
Jeff, you have a liaison report?
Yes, we got a request in from the Housing Authority Board of Commissioners asking the town to allocate some additional funds to them, specifically in connection with their joint effort with Georgia Green Ventures and Dave Gallo for the 3 Mile Harbor property that they're in the preliminary stages of development. They requested $25,000. I indicated that I supported it. I just wanted to mention it to say that, you know, I think they've done a good job. They carry a lot of they carry the ball a lot on housing plans, and the latest project in Amagansett is a real winner. And I think they're actually a pretty impressive team. The Board of Commissioners, pretty dedicated group, and their relationship with Georgia Green Ventures is a very productive one. I've had a chance to talk to Dave Gallo on a number of occasions. He's a young guy and very, very impressive, and has a serious record of accomplishment in the affordable housing sector. Very knowledgeable, very knowledgeable. So I hope that we can find a way to support them.
So Jeff, I had sent you an email back, you know, if you'd found if there a budget line you were recommending that we fund the $25,000 from.
Yes, I talked to Len Bernard about that, and Len basically said, you know, you could likely pay it from surplus. He wanted to refer it to John Jilnicki. I think it'd be a good idea for John and I to talk about it. But, you know, I just want to say that my feeling is that given the type of work they do and their record, and the fact that we haven't really increased our budget line for them for many years, I think the request is reasonable, and wherever the funds come from, I think as a policy of the board, it's a good idea to support this group. They've done good work, and looks like they're on the way on another new project. They're talking about the funds for use in pre-development engineering work that has to be done over on 3 Mile Harbor. So I think we can probably find a source. I'll follow up with John Jilnicki about it. Len Bernard said we could take it from surplus.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about finding a source. I'm sure we can figure that out. And I do support the effort. That's, as Katie had estimated, that's about 1/40th of what the design costs will be pushing that up to probably around $1 million in total. And as the board members who were on the board at the time will remember, the town guaranteed $4.5 million for loans so that the Amagansett property could be purchased, and we carried that for a number of years until that project got underway. So, you know, we, I think, will continue to be very supportive of affordable housing projects. This particular one off of 3 Mile Harbor Road, you know, the board's been helpful in establishing a path forward. I believe it's going before the planning board. Is it 24th?
That was February 24th.
February 24th.
It went for, yeah.
It was the preliminary. It was
Preliminary's been before the planning board. And so, you know, I think it's appropriate and for us to help out and be supportive of the authority, which is not actually a town entity connected directly to town government. It's a separate authority. Sometimes people confuse that, but we have like goals in that we both recognize the housing crisis here, and we need to work very cooperatively and effectively together in order to try and address that. So from my standpoint, I'm happy to commit to helping them with that funding request and moving that forward.
Glad to hear that. That's 2. Can I hear 3?
No, I support it. Is it something, could the Community Housing Opportunity Fund, Sylvia?
I don't know, because, well, we'll get those numbers if you want to get those numbers, but I'm not going to commit that one yet because we are trying to buy some other properties.
Yeah, and I'm not sure we can use those funds. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Whether those funds are appropriate to be used, but I'm sure we can come up with that amount. It's not a completely modest amount, but it's also not going to break the bank either, and it's
right
for a very important cause.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and I'm sure the board will be glad to hear it as well.
Of it also, Jeff, just to let you know. I think you have the full board support.
Yeah, that's good to hear. The East Hampton Sag Harbor CAC met. They were discussing the leaf blower legislation, had some, I guess, mostly support for the Sunday exception, you know, the no noise on Sunday. Actually, Katie raised the issue that she thought it was ethnocentric because Sunday's a Christian holiday and there are other Sabbaths like Jews have Saturday. Actually, it's something I've heard before in the Wainscott CAC. But there was a mixed reaction to the idea of another day with no leaf blowers. Kind of, some said it would be great, and others said, no, it's going to stop people from working on the weekends. Probably no surprise there. Probably better to let the law work its way out for a while before we start tinkering with it. They were concerned about the bus barn and would like to see solar and electric chargers over there, potentially to encourage electric buses eventually. And they made a plan to attend the school board meeting to try to raise that as an issue. We had sort of a somewhat involved discussion about a fairly straightforward issue. The members of a group called Corridor Watch, in connection with the Springs Fireplace Corridor study that was an add to the Hamlet studies, wrote a letter to the county exec and basically compared the county's law on not law preventing vehicles from dropping litter or debris onto streets. And they compared it to the town of East Hampton's law, which has a slightly different focus. The county's law basically prohibits any kind of debris, mud, concrete, dust of coming off a vehicle, and it becomes ticketable offense if that happens. The East Hampton town law focuses on securing the load that's in a truck. And it prohibits littering by the people who are on the truck, and then it also prohibits any loss of the load. And what they're concerned about is that the trucks that come in and out of the dump in particular are dropping quite a bit of debris off their chassis, which then gets into runoff, goes into the drainage structures, and interferes with stormwater runoff management. So they've written a letter. It actually just came in shortly before this board meeting started. They supported the Corridor Watch letter concerning the issue of drag out. It's called drag out onto Springs Fireplace Road. And in addition, Katie apparently was aware of there are accessories or structures that are sort of like the deer grates that you see on the ground that can be placed strategically at locations where trucks are exiting property, and it kind of shakes the chassis and gets rid of a lot of the debris. And they felt that that would help alleviate the problem. So what they're really, I will send the letter around. What they were really asking, I think, was for the town code to be rewritten to make it more consistent with the county law, which is broader, and also to bring to your attention the possibility of installing these kinds of devices that might lessen the amount of debris that falls off. They also recommended posting a police officer outside of the landfill, which I indicated I thought would be a little problematic given our discussions about the police departments being stressed for lack of manpower, and I could just hear Chief Sarlo's reaction to that, given his huge portfolio of activities and the limited guys that men and women that he has. But they did mention that a police officer is often posted there as in a speed trap, and maybe could also keep an eye on litter from trucks. But at any rate, I will pass it around to the town board, and maybe it can get some email comments back from the board as to whether you think our statute should be broadened. Seems like there is a possibility to do that. I'll send it.
Is that a letter from John Potter, or is this another letter you're talking about?
We got one yesterday, a Google Doc link from Katie representing the East Hampton CAC in support of the John Potter letter.
Yes,
but Jeff,
right.
I've looked into this. I had meetings with code enforcement, and the problem is enforcement. Does that mean that you've dropped something off your truck, and then so now they have to, code enforcement would have to follow the truck to their destination because it was a code enforcement, not a PD responsibility, or at least that's the way they saw it. And then what if the truck went out of town, or you're out of your jurisdiction, or they follow it? Do they give the ticket to the driver? Does the driver get the violation, or does the company he's driving for get the violation? It was pretty messy, but why don't you have at it? I mean, take a look at the code and see about modifying it.
Well, I felt the same way immediately, because a lot of the debris is like mud tracking onto the highway, and I thought, how are you going to enforce this thing? You gotta link the mud track to the truck. So I thought enforcement would be a problem. I'll send it out to John Jolnicki, and we can have a chat about it. I think rewriting it is not that difficult, but I agree with you. I'm not totally sure that enforcement is practical. But they're concerned about drag out. It probably would be more effective to install a device of some kind that shakes the chassis of the truck. And
drag out is a little easier to deal with, and it's certainly not just the dump. I mean, there are a multitude of material locations there where people can get compost, wood chips, sand, gravel, you name it. That whole corridor is basically industrial in nature. But that has contributed, I know, to sand in the roadway, sand on the shoulders, and the clogging up of drainage structures over time. So it's, certainly going to be something that Suffolk County also going to address in terms of ensuring that those new drainage structures don't get filled up quickly.
Well, I'll talk to John about it. We can, see if there's anything constructive we can do. I tend to think that just maybe requiring some device to, eliminate or lessen the drag out is better than trying to enforce a code a code change that sounds difficult. The LTV board meeting occurred a while ago. We've been away from it for a while, and they are in the process of testing the equipment that we talked about that could enable us eventually to, have partially remote, partially attended meetings. I think a step forward from them is that they're partnering with the East Hampton Library to move forward on creating the archives that they have, because the library has good experience in actually, storage and maintaining archives. And it's a long process, and they felt that it was going to be a good partnership and help them work together with a partner that has a little more experience in preserving archives. The ownership, of course, would remain with LTV, and they're working on details to make that kind of cooperation work. LTV also initiated 2 student scholarships for $500, which I think are pretty interesting. They're to be awarded to students that have a passion for community media, lifelong learning, and also an interest in free speech, which of course is a fundamental value of local public television. And they're going to reward them based on a personal essay on the importance of free speech in broadcasting, quite a topical issue these days. I think the town knows, but it bears repeating that LTV did reach an agreement to share content and to some extent facilities with the town of Southampton, which has taken a very long time, many, many years. And they're very happy to be embarking on that. It's kind of a neighborly thing to do, and it's the end of a lot of effort and a long time trying to come together through a negotiation. So I'm very pleased that they've been able to achieve that. One of the interesting things that they're doing is they're creating classes on how to produce videos on your iPhone, which is kind of an amazing decentralization of media. I guess there are now editing programs that you can actually film short documentaries on your iPhone, and they're going to have, I think, a show of some of the results that are produced by that. I also wanted to mention something about COVID, just to caution everybody. I know we're starting to move forward on the vaccinations, which is a good thing. The supply, and we certainly owe some thanks to Stony Brook Southampton for helping increase the supply. But as of yesterday, Suffolk County is listed as being at an extremely high risk of COVID exposure. Our new cases are up. We're on an upward trajectory. Our test positivity rate is 6%, which is quite high. There have been 73 deaths in the last 2 weeks, and our 14-day average is, as I said, on the rise. And we have a 4% increase in hospitalizations. So I know that we're all excited about summer. I know I am. I'm glad the weather is here, but I wanted to put that on the table. We're only 19% vaccinated on Long Island. And I just wanted to throw that out as a caution to, stay careful and keep protecting yourself and others. We're not out of the woods yet. And if you can bear to watch the national news, it's pretty grim in large regions like Michigan, where they're experiencing a huge wave of COVID, and our neighbors to the north in Ontario are in lockdown. So, we've got a way to go here, and we've got to be careful. And I just wanted to throw that out.
Jeff, can I just ask you where you got your numbers from? Because they don't seem to jive with what the county just sent me.
I got them from the New York Times.
Okay, because the county just circulated the infection rate, the new positives are 4.8%, and the number of people in Suffolk County who've been vaccinated with at least one dose is 33%.
Well, this is as of yesterday, April 5th, but it's from the New York Times. It's their Suffolk County tracker.
So I don't know why it would be less than the previous day's county numbers, but.
Well, I can show it to you right here. It's on the phone.
Well, I'm not doubting that the New York Times has that. I'm just wondering why there's a disparity between
I don't know. I will say there's
health department's numbers and New York Times.
There's not a disparity about the seriousness of the risk in Suffolk County, that the risk is rated as extremely high. So we have to be.
And I don't, I didn't mean to try to discount the seriousness of, the infection rate. I'm just curious as to why the numbers are so different in the reporting by the county health department in the New York Times. Is that
That's about what I have for you today.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Since we sort of ended up there on COVID, beginning today, anyone over the age of 16 is eligible in New York State to receive a COVID vaccination. And the number of COVID vaccinations circulating within the area have definitely increased. Recently, we've seen the first doctors' practices get supplies of vaccine. That's something that's very new. Until just recently, it was just entities such as the hospital, pharmacies, and the state and county, and in our case, the town, that were able to secure vaccine doses for distribution. So that's an encouraging sign. The more availability, the better. And with these new age groups being opened up, there certainly will be continuing demand. We currently have our town registry site is down, undergoing some updating. So we hope to have that back up in the next day or two, where you can go and register for future clinics within the town, primarily at the former CDCH building in Waynescott, where to date we've given thousands of vaccines to local residents. I've also been working on trying to identify those individuals within the community who, because of their physical condition, makes it extremely difficult for them to leave their home, so that we can identify those. If you happen to have a neighbor, or if you are a person who is unable to really leave your residence and you have not yet been vaccinated, you can contact my office at 631-324-4140. We want to be able to put together a list so that we can actually arrange with local healthcare providers to do a house visit if possible, or to set up a location very close by where you might be able to be transported to, for those, again, who are really not capable of traveling even to Waynescott from where they live.
So
again,
Human Services has the list of, there's a handful of people in that category, so I can reach out to Diane.
Well, I know that Human Services has a list, but I also know from my conversations and some phone calls that not everybody is on that Human Services list, and I just want to make that announcement.
Yeah. Oh, no. But I just want. Do you want me to have them send you the names of the folks that are home?
Absolutely, because we're trying to arrange with again, local healthcare providers and doctors to be able to potentially give in-home vaccinations, house calls, something from the past, but in these particular circumstances, would be welcome. I know there have been several people who've reached out to me in that situation, and currently the way things are set up, unless that private doctor is able to get doses and make those arrangements, that's not really taking place. And again, only very recently, in the last couple of days, have doctors nurse practitioners been able to receive doses of vaccine. We did talk about the infection rates. Again, the county infection rates sent to me were 4.8%. The total number of folks vaccinated with at least one vaccine dose is 493,241 for the county population, which is 1.5 million, representing roughly a third. To the councilman's point, just because people are getting vaccinated doesn't mean you can go around without a mask if you have been vaccinated. The science is still out as to whether or not people who've been vaccinated can carry and transmit the disease. It may be the case where that's possible, even though they don't get sick or have very mild symptoms, they still may be a vector for transmitting COVID. And with the more virulent and easily transmitted variants going about, this is no time to really relax and think, we're at a point where it's business as usual. So again, follow the safety protocols and be cautious. As the weather warms, we'll be able to spend more time outdoors, which also will probably lead to a reduction in the infection rate, because we know that the disease does not spread as efficiently outdoors. But even so, maintain safe distances, wear masks, and be sure to wash your hands a lot. We had a kickoff meeting with H2M engineering consultants for the downtown Montauk wastewater project. The reason that we hired them was to take us to the next step in bringing wastewater treatment to downtown, and that is the development of a map and plan. This would be a holistic plan that encompasses the environmental and social economic aspects of wastewater treatment. It needs to be a flexible system that can be expanded, because we know from our townwide wastewater management study, hamlet planning, and whatnot, that there are other areas within Montauk that also are very much in need of wastewater treatment. Those areas are often close to water bodies, like the dock area, transportation area, or ditch plains. We had a very productive meeting going over what the scope of work and what the expectations would be, talking about the infrastructure alternatives. The meeting was attended by Nick Bono, who's the project manager from H2M, and Chris Weiss, who also works with H2M. We had the executive director of CCOM, Laura Tuman, in attendance, who's also on the wastewater committee, as is our chair, Kay Tyler, who's also the executive director of the Montauk Chamber, Tim Shaw, our natural resources director, my chief of staff, Joanne Pilgrim, myself. We talked about, the cost benefits of moving towards a wastewater treatment, the environmental benefits. Talked about some of the work that H2M will have to do in order to build upon the Lombardo studies. There will be truthing of property IDs and wastewater flow calculations and projections to establish the baseline flows. We'll be talking about the funding sources from the Environmental Facilities Corporation and EPG grants for for engineering and planning aspects. We talked a bit about the timeline and the initial engineering design report should be completed by the end of this year, prior to the end of this year, with regulatory approval taking about another year. And at that point, the project would be able to go out to bid. There's still, a very large component of engaging the public and various stakeholders. This is, again, just an internal kickoff meeting prior to H2M really taking over the project moving forward. We also had a meeting yesterday of the Town Property Management Committee. There was a lengthy discussion about Boys Girls Harbor, the restrooms and pavilions, and the ADA rec path that's proposed on site, and revisions to the management plan. I expect that we'll be able to bring those recommendations from the Property Management Committee about the Boys and Girls Harbor property and those improvements, hopefully before the end of this month, and if not, early in May. We had a discussion briefly about the Phase 3 second house, Phase 3 restoration in Montauk at the historic second house. The exterior of the building is pretty much complete, but there's ongoing mechanical work that needs to be done inside. Exterior drainage is also contemplated as part of the upgrades there. We had additional conversation about Brooks Park and the formation of a management group. We invited Marietta Guevara, who's a abstract expressionist artist who lives locally in Springs, Scott Bluedorn, and Janet Jennings. Scott is chair of the Arts Council, and Janet Jennings is a member as well. They're both well-known local artists. In discussion about what steps would be necessary in order to move the project forward and ultimately get to restoration. Again, we've been looking for a management group to form or take on the responsibilities, the ongoing management and maintenance. We would need to have from them narratives about how they might bring public programming to the community and what that might entail, and how they might view using the site. The buildings have continued to deteriorate over time, even though the town has put tarps and boarded up windows. There's ongoing vandalism, which is of concern. And there was some discussion about also having some cameras put on site.
It should pay at the window.
So that we could deal with that issue. We also, I'll be holding a meeting with Sarah Kautz, who's from Preservation Long Island, to discuss possible options there for forming a management group as well. We touched briefly on the legalization of marijuana question and whether or not the town would opt out due to the caller on the line from Dan's Papers. Again, my point of view is that I think that decriminalization is the right thing, but in terms of whether or not we opt out of allowing businesses to set up pot shops in town, I think that's something we should take slow and engage the general public in a discussion. We have until the end of the year to make a decision about opting out. If we opt out, you can still opt back in at a later date. But if you don't opt out, you're pretty much unable to really formulate any prohibitions. You can impose what are considered reasonable restrictions, and what's considered reasonable, I guess, is somewhat subjective. So I think, at least from my standpoint, we need to go slow, go cautiously, and really understand all the implications before we make a decision on that. The police reform plan was submitted on time and sent up to the state. That went out 31st of March, ahead of the deadline. David touched briefly on the Montauk Lighthouse revetment project. It's in the preparation and staging portion of the project, and as David said, the public access ways are being secured so that there can be access to certain areas on the south side, west of where the revetment is being worked on, in the staging area there. The project is estimated to take about 2 years to complete, and it's to protect the historic Montauk Lighthouse, which was commissioned by George Washington and built in 1796. Certainly an icon for all of Long Island, and also has ties to Alexander Hamilton, who was the Commerce Secretary at the time, who lobbied very heavily for interstate commerce causes and improving the nautical transportation. And that lighthouse is a result of those efforts. Wanted to give you an update on the emergency communications system implementation. As David said, the foundations are actually supposed to start today for the new tower in Montauk, and that will require realignment of the road into the transfer station. They're waiting for a log recorder startup and configuration at the village dispatch, and the Gator site, which is the Suffolk County park location where the towers are east of Lake Montauk. That's awaiting building permits from Suffolk County DPW. But the first users, East Hampton Village, DPW, and Senior Transportation moved on to the new system on March 30th. This week there starts a potential search for any issues with the system. Fire departments will start to cut over on the 12th of April, and we'll have until 4/26 to touch all the radios. Law enforcement cutover will start on April 26th and run until May 10th. That leaves about 2 weeks for the governmental and other users to transition before Memorial Day. So the hope and thought is that we will be online prior to Memorial Day with that system. And I think that pretty well covers my liaison report. We do, let's see, do we have any callers?
Yes.
On the line?
Yes, we do. I'll unmute this caller with the last 4 digits, 8764. I'll unmute now.
Good afternoon. For my last comment as part of this trifecta, I'd like to discuss the 2 resolutions that made an appearance on the agenda, the published agenda today. These are 2 home rule requests. I recognize that a home rule request is merely encouragement to the legislature to go ahead and consider passing those laws that our local assemblyman and state senator have put before the appropriate committees. But I do wish that, with respect to both, that the public were to understand what it is that we are asking the state legislature to authorize. And I know when it comes to the first one, which has to do with allowing the town to set speed limits of no less than 20 miles per hour, which is to say lower than the current speed limit of 30 miles per hour on the roads within the town jurisdiction. I just think that if everyone were to understand that that legislation would authorize the town to consider adopting laws that would implement a speed limit of not less than 20 miles, which, by the way, is certainly appropriate in a school zone, but I think, personally, at no other place in the town. The following roads would be included: Indian Hill Road, Miller Lane East, Miller Lane West, Luff Road, Mako Lane, Marine Boulevard, Atlantic Avenue, Main Street and Wainscott, Wainscott Stone Road, and Indian Wells Highway. I think if everyone in town were to think they could be given a ticket for going more than a posted speed limit, whether it be 20 or 25, they would have some concerns about that. I don't think that you post a speed limit of an excessively low number so as to allow the police to give tickets 10 over that limit. If you have a speed limit, it should be something that you intend to enforce and is reasonable and practical to do so. And I don't frankly think, from my experience, having once upon a time been a public defender in the New Jersey Municipal Court where I dealt with indigents who had to deal with speeding tickets, I don't think that I would want to face 20-mile-an-hour speed limits on any of those locations in town other than where they exist for school zones. That's an appropriate place. The second resolution that you're going to consider today for home rule request is much more problematic. I happened to listen to the work session meeting where Chief Michaels and an assistant town attorney gave what I thought was simply a perfunctory review of their reasons for supporting the creation of a Bureau of Administrative Adjudication in the town of East Hampton. To the extent that someone thought that this could be a cost savings measure, I could understand their glee in suggesting and proposing it. However, the devil is in the details. Any Bureau of Administrative Adjudication must comply with all state laws that authorizes them to exist. And whereas it might be appropriate in New York City and Nassau County, Syracuse, Yonkers, and in the town of Huntington, which has a population roughly 10 times ours, I think it is a totally inefficient, ineffective, and costly method to create a whole new administrative bureaucracy, which would require a full-time attorney director of that bureau, with the creation of a whole sort of new rules and regulations and safeguards to protect the Administrative Bureau's customers, if you will, to protect their constitutional rights. You have to appoint a three-member committee of review, because yes, those things can be appealed, believe it or not. They're not simply collecting money on guilty pleas. It took the town of Huntington 3 years to work through the creation of the necessary computer system, which is independent of the state justice court system, and rules and regulations, and to appoint the necessary full-time director, which obviously for a full-time director who has to be an attorney would require a salary that's commensurate with their skills and experience. And I think that when you add all those factors into it, I think that the little town of East Hampton is an inappropriate place to even consider the creation of an administrative bureau of adjudication, considering that it has to meet all of those state guidelines in accordance with the state laws that authorize that alternative to the existing justice court system. I think that you're not ready. I think you should not be ready to adopt this resolution today without getting a serious breakdown of what the costs would be to the town if you were to go forward with this. I realize it doesn't cost you anything to adopt this resolution. The state legislature might disregard it. And I think in the case of the lower speed limits, if I understand correctly, the state legislature has been ignoring our request for this legislation for a couple of years now, and probably will do so again because, frankly, it's impractical. But the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication is a major step for our town that would impose a major cost on us, and I think there's no cost-benefit. A cost-benefit analysis needs to be done, and I think it'll come out that we're just not needed. It's just not a way to save money. It's going to cost a lot more money in the end. So I would ask you not to adopt that resolution.
Well, thank you for your comments, David. I'm going to just disagree with your position, and I believe that it will actually make things more efficient and that there won't be a negative cost implication because of the lost revenue that we currently have if we go forward with adjudicating these types of infractions where in many cases we never are able to collect. So it would seem to be a much more efficient approach. And again, this legislation is enabling legislation. It doesn't commit the town to anything in particular. We will certainly be giving this more consideration as we move forward, but based on the recommendations of both law enforcement and our town attorneys, this is the resolution that we have at hand. So thank you for calling in. I'll move on now. Do we have any other callers on the line, Michael?
No, we do not.
Okay, at this point then, we do have a few resolutions. Kathy?
Resolution 2021-462 is to increase the cap for the law office of Vince Toomey in PBA matters for calendar year 2021. We're increasing it by $15,000 for a total of $30,000.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried.
2021-463 is to authorize payment to Gary Ben Surveying for 11 Hodder Avenue. There was some confusion. This is a bill that came in almost a year late. It's in the amount of $800. Services were performed, so it's authorizing us to pay a 2020 invoice.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, pass and carry.
Resolution 2021-464 is to authorize proposed use of bottomlands of East Lake Drive for oyster gardens for individual use. This is for the community oyster program, as we discussed at the town board recently.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, pass and carried. Resolution 465 is to appoint Green River Cemetery caretaker for 2021. That is Carl Hamilton at annual fee of $1,000 paid quarterly, retroactive to January 1st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Pass and carried. 466 is a home rule request in support of Senate Bill S4027, Assembly Bill A4219. And as was previously discussed, this would allow the town of East Hampton to reduce speed limits in certain cases to below 30 miles per hour.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. Resolution 467 is a home rule request in support of Senate Bill S5556 and Assembly Bill A6138. And this would allow the town to have an administrative enforcement bureau.
Second.
Can we discuss that for a minute?
Absolutely.
I'm going to support this, but I do think that the idea of, before we act on this, of getting a cost benefit analysis is good. I'd like to see something a little more definite than what we've had so far.
Sure. Absolutely, Jeff. I think you'll see that it's actually quite beneficial for us to do this.
I hope so. It sounded like it when it was proposed. I just think I'd like to see it.
So we have a second?
Second.
You did.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. Anybody else have a resolution to offer?
I do. I have a resolution. It was put in with the wrong date, and I apologize. It was resolution ID 23977. It's to apply for a $5,600 grant application for historical designation of our town cemeteries. We will be applying. We will be trying to conduct a resource survey to identify, research, and create the inventory of the town's local cemeteries with historical significance. It is an application to the Preservation League of New York State for assistance.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passed and carried. Any other resolutions to offer? I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I move to enter into exec session to discuss our litigation strategy in the case of Ocean View Terrace Hotel versus Town of East Hampton, to discuss the acquisition of real property, and to receive advice from counsel.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Passed and carried. And what time would the board like to reconvene in exec?
3?
Yeah, I'd say 3.
Okay, very good. I will send out the link shortly.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Stay safe, be well, everyone. Don't let your guard down. COVID is still out there.
All right, take care.